The days living together with the elder sister. When you have an older sister who wants you to push her down all day and doesn't mind reversing the roles, are you happy or panicked? There is a type of charming man in the world who can be more beautiful than women, and Su Mu is one of them. His older sister, who he relies on, has a strong obsession with her younger brother. In his childhood, he was forced to wear girls' clothes. During middle school, he faced various interrogations and was forbidden from having a girlfriend. As an adult, he continued to endure mental bombardment and sexual harassment from his elder sister. A young man ran out of Fenghua Academy, searching for something in the crowd. When he spotted Su Mu, his eyes lit up, and he called out, "Classmate Su Mu." Su Mu turned his head in confusion, seeing a very handsome young man striding towards him. "But I don't seem to know him," Su Mu thought, blinking innocently. "Is there something you need?" Can I have a word with you, Mu-er?" The young man's handsome face flushed slightly as he glanced hesitantly at the passing crowd. "Stop. Don't call me that, it's so annoying." Su Mu rolled his eyes. "If you have something to say, just say it here." "Here?" The young man asked again, hesitating. "If you don't say it, I'll leave. I have other things to do." "Wait." The young man quickly grabbed Su Mu's arm, looking pained. "Can't you at least give me a chance?" Su Mu pulled his arm away with force, thinking to himself that there was nothing he could do. He suddenly took off his top and stood there proudly, humming, "Now do you believe I'm a guy?" The young man stared blankly at Su Mu, who stood like a proud little rooster, two streams of nosebleed trickling down his face. Two passers-by who were watching collided painfully. Another person, who was using his powers to move quickly, glanced this way and could no longer look away. He slipped and fell awkwardly. A person demonstrating how to control air pressure on the street also glanced over and accidentally lost control, shooting out nosebleeds 3 meters high. People kept falling, and even collisions between vehicles happened, turning the entrance of Fenghua Academy into chaos. The instigator, Su Mu, looked at the chaotic street and then at the petrified young man, who was staring at his chest with a nosebleed. Su Mu lowered his gaze to see a bandage wrapped around his chest. "What is this?" Su Mu screamed, raising his hand to tear off the bandage. As the first ray of spring light was revealed, a loud shout came, "Hey! You! Do you know what you're doing?" With that shout, Su Mu's actions came to an abrupt halt as a tremendous force restrained him. A large black suit fell from the sky and enveloped him. Half an hour later, at the Ability Inspectorate, a plump inspector impatiently knocked on the table. "Gender? Male." Su Mu stubbornly lifted his head. "Damn it. Do you think this is a joke? If I didn't see you as such a beautiful girl, I would have beaten you up already. Say it again. I'll give you one last chance." "Gender? Male." Su Mu shrugged nonchalantly. The unfortunate inspector shot a furious glare at Su Mu, about to act, when another inspector walked in. "The investigation results are in. This guy is indeed male." "What? You're kidding, right? Do I look like I'm joking?" The chubby inspector froze for a moment, then a cruel smile appeared on his face. "Since he is male, this will be easier. This incident has caused quite a stir. The higher-ups are very concerned." Su Mu rolled his eyes and raised his hands. "I declare, this has nothing to do with me." With another loud bang, the plump inspector shouted again, "Damn it! If it wasn't for you being a pervert wearing a bandage and running around naked, would all this have happened?" Su Mu froze. "A bandage? Why was I wearing a bandage?" A nightmarish image flashed through his mind, and he shivered. The inspector noticed this little movement and triumphantly snorted, "Now you're scared, huh? Come on, confess. You can suffer less." Su Mu rolled his eyes again and casually pulled out a communicator from his pocket. After a moment's hesitation, he dialed the number of the true mastermind behind this incident. Before long, a clear image appeared above the communicator. A girl in military uniform with dozens of medals pinned on her right chest appeared in the image. The two inspectors, one fat and one thin, stared at the girl with fiery eyes. Her indescribable beauty was captivating, and the military uniform accentuated a perfect figure that any man would want to possess. However, the blood-red rose emblem on the collar of her uniform extinguished the fire in their eyes in an instant. The Blood Rose was one of the elite special operations units of the ability users, consisting of only 5 female ability users, specializing in various international operations. Just when the two inspectors were in a dilemma, the girl widened her beautiful eyes and curiously asked, my most beautiful little brother. What's up when calling your most beautiful sister? Su Mu helplessly rolled his eyes at his sister, who had treated him like a doll since childhood. It was one thing to force him to wear girls' clothes, but this time she had secretly put a bandage on him. Su Mu chuckled and said, "Dear Sister Su Yang, thanks to you, I've been caught by the Ability Inspectorate. Could you please use your authority to let me go home?" "What? You were caught?" The elegant Su Yang jumped up like a cat whose tail had been stepped on, glaring at the two inspectors from the image, roaring, "Damn it! Do you two not want to work anymore? How dare you catch my little brother? Do you believe I can flatten your Ability Inspectorate right now? I, Major General Wang, the commander of the Blood Rose, order you. Release my brother." The two inspectors, who had just calmed down, felt the flames of anger reignite at the mention of Commander of the Blood Rose, Major General Wang. Their anger instantly transformed into obsequiousness as they hurriedly assured they would release Su Mu immediately. Both were internally lamenting, "Oh my god! We actually caught the little brother of that female demon? Su Yang? Level 6. Super ability user." Su Mu looked at his sister in the image, helplessly as she brazenly threatened the highest law enforcement organization in the Academy City, the Ability Inspectorate. Clearing his throat, Su Mu said, "Sister, do you understand that 3 dots of water represents an uncle?" Su Yang froze for a moment, covering her mouth in surprise, before returning to her previous elegant demeanor, lightly clearing her throat. Go home first, I'll be back early tonight." Su Yang smiled mysteriously, "There will be a surprise for you." Su Mu rolled his eyes again, thinking that her secretly putting a bandage on him was already surprising enough. He casually agreed and cut off the call. Looking up with a smile at the two inspectors, he asked, "Can I leave now?" Chapter 1, The Sensational 18th Birthday. As the first rays of starlight scattered across the night sky, Su Mu finally dragged his weary body to the front of his house. It was unfortunate that the Bureau of Ability Supervision was located on the other side of the Academy City. He casually reached into his pocket to feel for his keys. Huh? Where are they? Just then, a light pop sounded, and the door slowly opened. A flash of pink caught Su Mu's attention, and the figure, seeing him searching for his keys, paused for a moment. Then, with a cheer, she yanked Su Mu, who was still trying to grasp the situation, inside. Su Mu felt an irresistible force pull him into their house, and then he found himself enveloped in a warm embrace. A faint, alluring fragrance ignited a surge of male hormones within him. Looking up, he saw his sister Su Yang's perfect face reflected in his jet black eyes. "Sister. Arhar. My most beautiful brother. Have you missed your most beautiful sister?" Su Yang nuzzled her face against Su Mu's smooth cheek. With all his strength, Su Mu pushed Su Yang away, gasping for air as he looked at her. "Can you not be so dramatic? Seriously, I went through so much to come back and wait for you after the meeting. Yet you're so indifferent, and didn't he even miss me?" Su Yang crossed her arms, pouting in dissatisfaction. "We just parted in the morning," Su Mu shouted. Su Yang remained silent, gazing at him with a pitiful expression on her face. Not long after, Su Mu wearily raised his hands. "You win." With a cheer, Su Yang lunged toward him again, but Su Mu quickly stepped back in defense, pulling out the breast wrap from his bag. "Can you please explain to me what this is?" Su Yang giggled and stuck out her cute little tongue, her bright eyes sparkling like stars as she asked in confusion, "Huh? Isn't this the chest wrap I wore when I was a kid? Why is it in your bag?" Su Mu felt a headache coming on as he looked at his sister, who refused to admit it was hers. He sighed, knowing that no matter how much he struggled, it would be futile. He understood Su Yang too well. Since he couldn't resist, he might as well let bygones be bygones. Deep down, he felt a surge of despair had he become infamous already. Just then, Su Yang frowned and clutched her stomach, pouting, I'm hungry." Su Mu rolled his eyes in frustration. He had recently noticed that he was developing a habit of rolling his eyes. Life could be so frustrating at times. "I'll go make you something to eat." "Seriously, are you the older sister or am I?" Su Mu complained as he headed to the kitchen. You can play the role of the older sister too." Su Yang giggled, following closely behind him. Having grown up together, Su Mu knew Su Yang well. He quickly stopped her from entering the kitchen. "Sister, go relax in the living room. I can handle this." "Really? Hee, Mu is so nice. Su Yang cheered, giving him a quick kiss on the cheek before skipping away. Watching her leave, Su Mu shook his head with a wry smile. He preferred her when she was in work mode, calm, strong, wise, sexy. Most importantly, reliable. She was like a blood-stained rose, the #1 target on every country's blacklist. She sacrificed so much for a better life, and Su Mu couldn't help but smile. No matter which version of Su Yang, I like them all. Satisfied with the spread of a sumptuous dinner laid out on the table, he clapped his hands and turned to walk toward the living room. When Su Mu entered the living room, he noticed that the lights were off. Tentatively, he called out, "Sister." After a slight hesitation, he gently pushed the door open. Suddenly, with a pop, a colorful object exploded in his face, startling his heart to race. When he regained his composure, he realized it was just a bundle of streamers. Mu. Happy birthday. Before Su Mu could react, Su Yang appeared from the darkness, wearing a pink tank top, and leaped onto him like a playful tiger pouncing on a sheep, pinning the dazed Su Mu to the ground. Sister. What are you doing? Get off. Su Mu's face flushed as he felt Su Yang's warmth and the faint fragrance emanating from her. Eh? You're blushing. Su Yang giggled as she lay on him, intentionally teasing. What? Are you interested in your sister's body? What nonsense are you talking about? Su Mu snapped, finally managing to push her off and sit up. R. Su Yang squeaked. What's wrong? Did I hurt you? Su Mu looked up only to see Su Yang sitting there, one strap of her tank top sliding down, the hint of her body causing his brain to short-circuit. A victorious smile spread across Su Yang's face as she leaned closer, drooling slightly. Mu, since so many people want this body, I'll give it to you as a birthday gift. After all, we don't share blood ties. Sister, you're drooling. Su Mu shook his head to clear his thoughts, his eyes regaining clarity. He had developed a strong immunity to Su Yang's antics, having grown up with her. At the same time, he found her constant attempts to get him to topple her utterly frustrating. Su Yang paused for a moment, wiped her mouth, and with a serious expression, said, Mu, happy birthday. After a moment's hesitation, she licked her lips while eyeing Su Mu's delicate features. If you want, you can have your sister too. Su Mu rolled his eyes, not knowing who would devour whom. He stood up, ignoring the sultry gaze of the stunning beauty, and declared, dinner's ready. He turned and walked away without looking back. Su Yang's previously pitiful expression shifted as she huffed angrily, stop right there. Su Mu's head throbbed. This beloved sister changed her personality dozens of times a day, making it impossible for him to figure out which one was the real her. After nearly 17 years of various lessons learned, Su Mu wisely halted, turning to face her. Su Yang stared at him coldly, then suddenly blushed, saying, I order you now, push me down. Rolling his eyes, Su Mu resolutely walked away. Women were strange creatures, especially those surrounded by countless men. The more they could have something, the more they desired it. Not to mention Su Yang's severe brother complex. Su Yang stomped her foot, gritting her teeth and muttering under her breath, spewing threats like, just wait and see. Suddenly, as if struck by inspiration, she burst into laughter, closing her eyes and softly speaking to herself, Mom and Dad, are you watching? Mu and I have grown up. A tear slid from the corner of her eye, trailing down her stunningly beautiful cheek. In the corner, Su Mu leaned quietly against the wall, a smile on his lips. Yes, we've all grown up. Chapter 2, The 7-Character Badge. In the morning, Su Mu sent Su Yang, dressed in military uniform, to the door of their home. Mu, I'm off. Take good care of the house. Su Yang looked at him tenderly. Yeah, safe travels. Hee, don't forget to think of your sister. Su Yang gently adjusted the collar of Su Mu's shirt, then stomped her foot lightly, and a golden arc of electricity flashed beneath her feet as she shot into the sky like a bolt of lightning. Su Mu squinted up at the sky, watching the glimpses of spring light beneath Su Yang's skirt, and spat angrily, that bastard. Yes, that bastard. A perverted ability user in the military designed this uniform, which is called visible yet forever unseen, specifically for the blood-red rose. With a heavy sigh, Su Mu reflected on being a man. Yes. An 18-year-old man with such a stunning sister. And it was often his stunning sister. That's quite a burden. He regretted every time he turned down Su Yang, and the hardest part was pretending it didn't matter. There's a saying, people need their face, and trees need their bark. Feeling extremely conflicted, he sighed again. Why were there no girls confessing to him? Why were only boys confessing their feelings? He pinched his face, which wasn't he much worse than Su Yang's. The sound of the communicator interrupted Su Mu's musings. He pulled it out, surprised. Sis? With a beep, Su Yang's image appeared on the communicator. Hi, my most beautiful little brother, do you miss me? Haven't we just separated? Su Mu looked at the image of Su Yang with a dark expression. Su Yang pouted in dissatisfaction. Seriously, Mu you don't understand romance at all. Gently rubbing his slightly aching head, Su Mu asked, what's up? And next time, please call me the most handsome brother. I left a file folder in the living room and forgot to give it to you. You can check it yourself. It's something your mom and dad left behind for you to see on your 18th birthday. I accidentally forgot. Su Yang said with an apologetic smile. Got it. Is there anything else? Su Yang blinked her big eyes, seeming to consider if she forgot anything. A massive transport plane appeared behind her in the image. Watch out! Su Mu exclaimed. Su Yang's little face grew serious, and suddenly, electric arcs filled the entire image as she muttered, I'm in trouble again. Before closing the communication. Shaking his head in wry amusement, Su Mu put down the communicator, vaguely noticing a large bill that had been sent to their home. He smiled bitterly, realizing that Su Yang, who insisted on living in the Academy city with him, flew halfway across the Dragon Feather Kingdom every day for work using her electric abilities, often causing accidents similar to colliding with transport planes. Returning to the living room, he indeed found a file folder sitting on the table. Su Mu casually opened it, discovering only a data disk and a strange badge inside. He picked up the odd badge and examined it closely. It was shaped like the number 7, with a horizontal line cutting through the middle like a knife, separating the top and bottom parts. He shook his head slightly, setting the badge down, and picked up the data disk. After hesitating briefly, he connected the data disk to the communicator terminal. A three-dimensional image appeared above the communicator, showing a couple looking gently at Su Mu. Mom and Dad. Su Mu froze for a moment. At that moment, the man in the image spoke, Hey! Little Su Mu, how are you doing? Have you grown up? The woman shot the man a strange glare, then looked forward with infinite tenderness. Mu you must have grown up now, right? When you see this image, we may no longer be around. Please take good care of Yang for us. The man laughed heartily. Mu you've always been so girly. If you're a man, marry my daughter. It's the least you can do for your father's kindness in adopting you. Su Mu gently wiped away a tear from the corner of his eye and closed the image. This couple had adopted him when he was abandoned as a monster. Unfortunately, they lost their lives in an accident when Su Mu was 7 years old. At just 10, Su Yang had worked hard to support him, enduring countless hardships to achieve their current success. Everything was for him. Recalling his childhood, Su Mu had once dreamed of marrying Su Yang, but after the various torments she put him through in her youth, the interrogations during his middle school days about whether he had a girlfriend, and the later mental harassment, just the thought of her sent shivers down his spine. Deep down, he understood it was all out of Su Yang's fear of losing him. Gently slapping his face, he exhaled a deep breath and continued to watch the image. Bastard! You just closed the image, didn't you? A different image appeared on the communicator. Har, I want to show you the touching stuff from earlier. Su Mu's adoptive father said proudly, a loving expression in his eyes. Su Mu's eyes turned slightly red as he watched the image of his lively adoptive father, who in his blurry memories seemed like an unreliable scientist. His adoptive father bounced around for a while, then proudly pulled out the 7-character badge and showed it off. You've seen this badge, right? You must be curious about what it does. You must be troubled as to why your ability index is always 27, huh? Har, tremble beneath the feet of your great and wise father. Otherwise, I want to tell you. Just as Su Mu was about to close the image again, a smooth, well-shaped leg suddenly appeared and knocked the overly proud man away. Su Mu's adoptive mother appeared in the image. She smiled apologetically at the front. Mu don't mind your idiot father. This badge is a power limiter that we developed just for you. The system has already been implanted in your body. You must be wondering why we created this thing, right? Let us show you a segment of an image. The scene shifted, and Su Mu's adoptive father appeared in the image again, along with a lovely little child who was playing with a toy car. Be good, Mu. Look at this. Little Su Mu looked up with big eyes at the toy car. In Su Mu's bewildered gaze, his adoptive father lifted the toy car and smacked it hard on little Su Mu's head. A shrill cry erupted, and little Su Mu began to glow with silver light, his dark hair turning silver as he fiercely grabbed at the toy car, reducing it to dust. Chapter 3: Liberation Restricted Abilities. The image flickered, and Su Mu's bruised adoptive father appeared on the screen again. He shrugged nonchalantly and said, Mu, as you can see, your destructive power is too strong, and you have no ability to control it. This is probably why you were abandoned. He casually pulled out a report and looked up. According to my authoritative tests, your ability puts a great burden on your body. To allow you to live more normally, your dad and I secretly used Research Institute technology to develop a limiter for you that can suppress your power to the minimum level. The badge you see now is that limiter. By the way, this limiter has a small flaw. An exceedingly pretentious expression reappeared on his adoptive father's face. Do you want to know? Har har har. Your old man is a genius. You know. That round, sexy thigh appeared again, mercilessly interrupting his self-praise. Su Mu's adoptive mother appeared on the screen, showing an apologetic smile. Mu, I believe you're currently troubled by your physique, right? That's right, that's the flaw of this limiter. After a slight pause, her eyes gleamed as she continued, the ability limiter system will greatly inhibit your physical development, but don't worry, when you unlock the limiter, you'll revert to your original state. Of course. And as long as you unlock it once, your body will return to its normal growth rate, and slowly, you'll truly possess a man's physique. Her adoptive father squeezed into the frame, grinning from ear to ear. Mu, you must be a stunning beauty now, right? Har ha har ha. I've input all of Yang's data into the limiter. Hee, no need for more chit-chat, just pin the badge on your collar and say liberate to it. You understand? The limiter will automatically assess your body's capacity, and when it reaches its limit, it will restrict your power again. That's it. With a light beep, the image disappeared. Su Mu hesitated for a moment and pinned the badge onto his collar. Liberate. A flash of red light swept across the horizontal line of the number 7, and the badge bizarrely rotated, transforming into an inverted number 7. Su Mu's short hair quickly grew long, changing from black to silver. He also noticeably grew taller, and his dark, gem-like eyes turned silver as well. Su Mu looked at his hands in disbelief, feeling a surge of strength fill his formerly weak body. After a moment of hesitation, Su Mu went to the mirror, and a super handsome man appeared in the reflection. Silver hair, silver eyes. A hint of a roguish expression played on his handsome face, his originally tight-fitting shirt now torn, revealing a somewhat slender yet sculpted physique. An unprecedented feeling of happiness surged within him as Su Mu roared internally, I finally look like a man. He lifted his right hand and gently touched the mirror. In a flash of dazzling silver light, the mirror shattered into powder and vanished into the air. Staring in astonishment at his right hand, just then, a wave of heartache surged through him. The number 7 badge flipped again, his silver hair transformed back to black, his silver eyes reverted to dark, and his tall figure returned to that frail body. Su Mu collapsed helplessly onto the ground. This was the limit. He thought helplessly, from the moment he unlocked the limiter until now, it couldn't have been more than 3 minutes. Feeling utterly drained, Su Mu lay on the ground, a wry smile creeping onto his face. Yang would surely be surprised to see the liberated him, right? After thinking it over, considering the exhaustion following the liberation and the potential danger of being pushed hard by Su Yang, Su Mu decided to keep this matter a secret. Night silently descended. Su Mu lay on the floor for 2 hours before he barely regained his strength. By now, he had changed into new clothes and was preparing dinner. Satisfaction filled him as he glanced at the sumptuous dinner laid out on the table. Su Mu smugly rubbed his hands together, thinking it was about time to ask Su Yang for some pocket money to buy a few looser outfits for tomorrow. Otherwise, every time he liberated himself and tore his clothes, he wouldn't have enough to wear. Just as he settled on this thought, a golden electric flash landed in the yard. Back already? Su Mu paused for a moment, checking his clothes again to ensure everything was all right. I'm back. Su Yang cheered as she kicked open the door and rushed in. Eh? Su Yang looked dazed as she spotted Su Mu coming to greet her. A bead of cold sweat trickled down Su Mu's forehead. Did I reveal something? Su Mu would never inadvertently expose anything. Forcing a stiff smile, he asked, Sister, what's up? Su Yang blinked her big eyes and shook her head slightly. Nothing, you seem to have grown a bit taller, it might just be my imagination. Sister, you must be too tired. Su Mu chuckled awkwardly, wondering just how well she knew him. Had he really grown taller? Before Su Mu could finish his thoughts, Su Yang let out a delicate cry and jumped onto him, pouting cutely. Mua, I'm so tired today. Help me massage. Su Mu froze for a moment. Massage? He recalled the last time Su Yang insisted he massage her. She had stripped down, unaware of how alluring she was, and simply laid there, leaving Su Mu feeling conflicted. Su Mu waved his hand with an awkward smile. Maybe not this time. Su Yang, still clinging to him, pouted in displeasure and playfully blew into his ear. Please. Su Mu rolled his eyes, resolutely shaking his head. Absolutely not. Che, Mua, you're not gentle at all. Gently patting her back, Su Yang shivered slightly and looked up at him with confusion. Mua. What's up? You seem different. Furrowing his brow slightly, Su Mu shook his head. Sister, you're overthinking. What was in that file bag? Did you look at it? A one-time video projection, it's a message from our parents, Su Mu replied honestly. A message from that bastard old dad and beautiful mom. What did they say? Why didn't you let me see it? Su Yang asked curiously, her big eyes blinking. Looking down at Su Yang's delicate face, with its exquisite features set against her oval face, her slightly furrowed brows, and her pouting, rosy lips, Su Mu felt an impulse to kiss her, remembering his adoptive parents' request in the video. She is my sister. Su Mu suddenly realized, his face flushed as he quickly turned away. Let us eat dinner first. Su Yang leaned in suspiciously, revealing her cute little tiger teeth and gleefully asked, Did you just want to kiss me? Su Mu's face turned red as he pushed Su Yang off him without a word and turned to leave. Watching Su Mu's retreating figure, Su Yang suddenly broke into a mischievous smile. Mua. You can't escape my grasp. Chapter 4, Are They Here to Rob? The next morning, after once again seeing his sister off to work, Su Mu continued to gaze at her figure until it vanished on the horizon. He cursed the bastard who designed the military uniforms for being utterly incompetent, and felt the exquisite magnetic card, faintly carrying Su Yang's fragrance, in his pocket. Recalling how he had first asked Su Yang for pocket money last night, Su Mu smiled at the memory. Su Yang had excitedly shoved this card, whose overdraft limit was anyone's guess, into his hands. Now, he was on his way to the bank for the first time to withdraw money. As Su Mu hummed a pop song and arrived at the bank, he was taken aback by the long line of customers. Scratching the back of his head, he mumbled a few words and resigned himself to standing at the end of the queue, silently waiting his turn. Hey, isn't that Su Mu? A surprised voice called from behind. Turning around in confusion, he saw a strikingly handsome young man standing behind him. He? Har, it really is Su Mu. He laughed and patted Su Mu on the shoulder. Rolling his eyes habitually, Su Mu forced a smile. What a coincidence. He was one of the few male friends Su Mu had, also a student at Fenghua Academy. His ability was to manipulate carbon molecules, allowing him to change their structure into whatever he wanted. He was a well-known figure in the academy, a top-tier playboy, and even referred to himself as a virgin killer. He had confessed his feelings to Su Mu before learning about Su Mu's true gender, after which they became good friends. You here to withdraw money too? He asked, looking at Su Mu with curiosity. It seemed like a payday for everyone today. He had never heard of Su Mu having a job, although he knew about Su Mu's exceptionally beautiful and wealthy sister. Of course I'm here to withdraw money. Har, all right then. Wow, there are so many people. He aimlessly scanned the surroundings, pausing only when he spotted a few attractive women, letting out occasional tchk sounds. Su Mu had long since gotten used to He's brazen behavior. He took a small step forward, pretending not to recognize He, whose eyes were practically on fire. Hey, Su Mu. Look. That woman's figure is amazing. He lightly slapped Su Mu on the shoulder. Reacting instinctively, Su Mu glanced over and saw a woman dressed in an extremely flamboyant manner standing at the counter, seemingly asking something. Powder from her heavily made-up face occasionally fell off, nearly making Su Mu gag. This kind of woman. She couldn't even compare to a single finger of Su Yang. Seeing the disgusted expression on Su Mu's face, He shook his head helplessly, a lewd smile creeping onto his face. Su Mu, you just don't get it. Women like this have flavor. That figure is impressive. Women are the same even when the lights are off. Under the peculiar stares of several middle-aged women, Su Mu was covered in cold sweat and stepped forward again. Didn't this guy know to keep his voice down? He didn't want to be associated with him. With a mischievous grin, he followed him closely. Su Mu, I heard you have a very beautiful sister. How about introducing her to me? This hit a nerve for Su Mu. His delicate face turned extremely frightening. What did you just say? Raising both hands, he awkwardly took a step back. Just kidding. Just kidding. Don't get worked up. Seemingly realizing he had crossed a line, he tried to backtrack. Su Mu forced a bitter smile and shook his head. Some things shouldn't be said casually. Seeing that Su Mu wasn't angry, he sighed in relief and leaned closer, resting on Su Mu's shoulder, which was significantly shorter than his own. Hey, Su Mu, you wouldn't have feelings for your sister, would you? Su Mu hesitated slightly, questioning himself, do I like Su Yang? Memories of their interactions flooded his mind, and a flush of embarrassment crept onto his cheeks. He watched Su Mu's speechless, reddened face with amusement. TSK, I thought I was already quite something, but you beast. To have those kinds of thoughts about your own sister. We're not even blood related. Su Mu instinctively shouted. Around them, the middle-aged women perked up their ears with an "oh tilde" and began pointing and gossiping, and in an instant, countless versions of the story began circulating. Su Mu's face turned beet red as he shot He a glare and looked down, ignoring him. But he continued to chatter on, relentlessly probing into the relationship between Su Mu and Su Yang. Before long, they found themselves close to the counter. He, who was parched with curiosity, still hadn't managed to extract any information about Su Yang from Su Mu. He sighed and looked at the counter right before him, then asked suspiciously, Hey, Su Mu, are you really here to withdraw money? Am I here to rob the place? Su Mu shot him an annoyed glance. Robbing? Everyone, put your hands on your heads and squat down, a loud, coarse shout echoed throughout the bank. What the hell? No way. He's eyes nearly popped out as he watched a few men, holding the latest thermal guns, seal off the bank's entrance. The bustling crowd outside the bank dispersed in an instant. Who would dare to rob in the Academy City? Most people living here were ability users. Immediately, everyone, including Su Mu and He, obediently raised their hands and squatted down. Everyone. A man dressed as a manager approached, his forehead slick with sweat. Our bank can meet any of your requests, please don't harm our customers. A man with a terrifying centipede-like scar on his face glanced coldly at the bank manager, disdainfully spitting on the ground. A mere powerless person dares to speak like this in front of me. In the midst of countless terrified screams, the man raised his thermal weapon and shot the manager. A flash of red light appeared, and with a thud, the manager's body hit the ground, a terrifying hole torn into his chest. Without any blood spilling out, the horrifying high temperature had instantaneously evaporated what should have been splattered blood. He crouched down, gritted his teeth and was about to jump up when Su Mu urgently pulled him back, holding him down tightly. What are you doing? He whispered anxiously. Are you trying to get yourself killed? Su Mu replied, his face pale. He was using all his strength, yet he could barely hold onto He. He looked at Su Mu's pale face and the hand gripping him tightly, sighed, and crouched down. Su Mu, these guys are definitely ruthless killers. I'll cover you. You must escape. The Ability User Supervision Bureau can't help, these guys are also ability users and have thermal weapons. You should go find the Student Council's Discipline Division monsters. What about you? Su Mu frowned. He absolutely could not leave He behind to escape alone. He had no idea how powerful his abilities would be after being unlocked, and he wasn't about to test it now. What to do? If only my sister were here. Su Yang's figure appeared in Su Mu's mind, and he shook his head violently, banishing that unrealistic thought from his mind. Chapter 5 Silver-haired and silver-eyed bastard. A man with short fiery red hair who looked like a boss looked at the screaming crowd with dissatisfaction. He suddenly pulled out an old-fashioned revolver from his waist and fired 3 shots in a row at the sky. Bang, bang, bang. The 3 terrifying sounds of metal clashing instantly quieted the noisy crowd. The man with fiery red hair nodded with satisfaction. He glanced at the man with a centipede-like hideous scar on his face behind him. Old Third, restrain yourself, we are not here to kill people, let's work. The man called Old Third shrugged, handed the thermal energy weapon in his hand to a younger brother behind him, took out 3 steel beads and threw them at the door of the bank vault. The small steel beads actually smashed the entire door down when they hit the door of the vault. TSK, control gravity. He blocked Su Mu behind him and hid in the crowd and slowly moved towards the door. Just then, a scream was heard, and an extremely obscene man among the robbers pulled out a girl who was obviously overly frightened from the crowd. Su Mu. That's. He exclaimed in a low voice. Su Mu looked over when he heard the voice. Yishuan. Why is she here? How do I know? Isn't she level 4, a powerful person? Su Mu looked at the almost collapsed Yishuan being pulled by the obscene man, and a self-deprecating smile hung on the corner of his mouth. A powerful person without the courage to fight is just a vase. There's really no way. He suddenly jumped up, and a black wing appeared behind his black shirt, and flew over at a lightning speed. Damn. So fierce. Su Mu cursed, and saw he had come to the obscene man before everyone could react. The black wings suddenly opened and turned into dozens of black long whips, almost instantly whipping away several robbers holding high-heat weapons around, and the obscene man was taken care of. He grabbed Yishuan and just wanted to comfort her, but he didn't expect Yishuan to hug him fiercely as if she had grabbed a life-saving straw. Yishuan cried out loudly with dilated pupils, Hee! Hee! Save me! Let me go! He never thought this would happen. This time he was going to die here. The robber's boss naturally discovered the situation here, grinning and pulling the trigger at Hee, who was tightly hugged by Yishuan. At this moment, even time seemed to slow down. He instinctively covered Yishuan's eyes with his hands. It is said that being hit by an old-fashioned firearm will make one die very ugly. A silver light flashed, and the imagined scene of flesh and blood did not appear. I don't know when a man with silver hair and silver eyes stood in front of Hee. In the eyes of everyone's unbelievable eyes, the metal bullet turned into nothingness in the silver light. Hero! Hee shouted, and at that moment he really felt that he was finished. Su Mu, who had just breathed a sigh of relief, was startled by Hee. Just as he was about to speak, bang! There was a loud noise, and the glass of the entire bank was shattered. The glass fragments stayed in the air strangely, and a lazy voice sounded, "The criminals inside, surrender quickly, don't test my patience." Su Mu was stunned for a moment. It should be the people from the discipline department. Sure enough. A girl walked in lazily, with the logo of the discipline department embroidered on her cuffs. Countless glass fragments were aimed at the robbers, including the third brother who had just come out of the vault, and raised his hands at the same time. This is trouble. Su Mu secretly cried out that it was not good. It seemed that there was no way to retreat. What if he saw his original appearance? Seeing the arrival of the discipline department, he breathed a sigh of relief. He pushed away Yishuan, who was holding him tightly like throwing away garbage, grabbed Su Mu's hand, and asked excitedly, "Hero, what's your name?" Su Mu was stunned, looked at Hee, and suddenly his eyes lit up. Just as Hee was wondering why this silver-haired handsome guy was wearing the same clothes as Su Mu raised his hand and gently patted his shoulder, and a strange silver light flashed across Hee's body. Hee felt a gust of cold wind blowing through his lower body, and trembled a little. Hee looked down. A scream resounded throughout the sky. Su Mu, who finally got away, found a remote alley to wait for the restrictions to be restored. Soon the 7-character badge turned upside down to the positive 7 type. He exhaled lightly, gritted his teeth and endured the discomfort of his body to come to a cafe, quietly waiting for his body to recover. In a blink of an eye, a few hours passed. Su Mu left the cafe and changed to another bank. After withdrawing cash, he walked towards the downtown area with shining eyes. Su Mu was almost blinded by the dazzling array of goods. Suddenly, 2 familiar figures appeared in the bustling crowd. It turned out to be Hee and Yishuan. Yishuan, who seemed to be still in shock, held Hee's hand tightly. "Damn, no way." Su Mu cried out in a low voice, turned his head and wanted to flash into the crowd. "Su Mu! Where are you running?" He just turned around and saw a small boy rushing into the crowd. He immediately gritted his teeth and pulled Yishuan over. Su Mu stopped with a dry laugh. "What a coincidence. You disloyal bastard. Where did you go just now? I almost died. He grabbed Su Mu, who was retreating, and said viciously. Su Mu showed a confused expression with a flash of inspiration in his mind. Didn't you say that you attract the attention of the criminals and I will find someone from the discipline department? Huh? It seems so. He scratched his head awkwardly, as if I told him so. Then the people from the discipline department really came, but they seemed to come a little too fast. Before he figured out what was going on, Su Mu looked at Yi Shuwen, who was hiding behind He with a playful look. He, you and Yi Shuwen. He was stunned, and proudly puffed up his chest. Don't you know the story of the hero saving the beauty? Of course the beauty must be willing to marry. Yi, who is this girl? Yi Shuwen looked at Su Mu curiously, and although the panic in the depths of her eyes was much less, it was still full of moisture. Su Mu, who was about to mock Yi, suddenly had a headache. Girl? I'm a man. He laughed and patted Yi Shuwen's little hand. Shuwen, this is Su Mu, don't you know him? He is a real man. What? Yi Shuwen's beautiful eyes widened. This is Su Mu? The boy who is said to be comparable to the most beautiful girl in the school. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly, and Su Mu rolled his eyes. You guys go shopping, I'll go buy clothes. Wait. He stopped Su Mu, who was about to dive into the crowd. What's wrong? Su Mu blinked his black gemstone eyes innocently. At this moment, Su Mu was completely possessed by Su Yang. This acting skill, as the initiator of He's naked streaking, Su Mu can still face him so calmly, which is simply the true teachings of Su Yang. Did you see? He hesitated for a moment, and changed the topic to ask, did you see a bastard with long silver hair and silver eyes in the bank? No. What happened? Su Mu tried to hold back his laughter and tried to stay calm. He frowned and looked at Su Mu's clear eyes, laughed dryly, and said with gritted teeth, nothing, just a friend. Just kidding. Su Mu didn't see that he was running naked, but he wasn't stupid enough to tell him the details. Chapter 6, Asking for Love. After saying goodbye to He and Yi Shuwen, Su Mu bought a few loose clothes and set off on his way home. When he gently opened the door, he saw a beautiful figure sitting alone on the steps at the door with a pale face. The desperate paleness deeply hurt Su Mu's heart. Sister. Hearing Su Mu's call, Su Yang's body suddenly trembled, and she raised her head suddenly, looking at Su Mu standing there in surprise and joy. She covered her mouth with her right hand, and crystal tears kept sliding down her cheeks, forming a beautiful and heartbreaking picture. Sister. What's wrong with you? What happened? Su Mu threw down the package in his hand and took the initiative to hug her for the first time. Feeling the body temperature coming from Su Mu, Su Yang hugged Su Mu's waist tightly like a drowning person grabbing the last straw, buried her head in his arms, and sobbed intermittently. Su Yang's body in his arms kept shaking, and Su Mu didn't know what to do for a while, so he could only hug her tightly and wait for her to calm down. Unconsciously, tears had wet Su Mu's chest, and the trembling body in his arms gradually calmed down. Yang, what's wrong? What happened? Su Mu patted her back gently and asked as gently as possible. Suddenly, a sharp stinging sensation came from his shoulder. Su Mu looked down and saw Su Yang biting his shoulder tightly, looking at him hatefully with eyes that turned slightly red due to excessive tears. It's okay, Yang, don't scare me. Su Mu gritted his teeth and endured the excruciating pain, and the bright red blood quickly dyed his shoulder red. The faint smell of blood brought Su Yang, who was almost mentally collapsed, back to reality. She quickly opened her mouth and looked at the bloodstain on Su Mu's shoulder in panic. What did I do? Su Yang raised her head, and her red eyes reflected Su Mu's slightly pale face. Her red lips with a trace of blood trembled again, and her sad tears fell quietly. Muer. Su Yang choked and hugged Su Mu tightly again. I'm here. Su Mu breathed a sigh of relief and patted Su Yang's trembling shoulders again. This time, Su Yang quickly calmed down and quietly nestled in Su Mu's arms. Sister, what happened? You dare to ask? Su Yang raised her head and looked at Su Mu angrily and hatefully. Su Mu was stunned. What? Did I make her cry so sadly? I didn't do anything. Before Su Mu could speak, Su Yang raised her face, which had regained some color, and asked, I'm asking you. Where's your communicator? Yes, why? Hey. Su Mu touched his empty pocket and was stunned. I heard today that the bank you went to was robbed, so I rushed here as soon as possible, but I didn't see you at the scene. I asked the people in the discipline department, and they also said they didn't see you. Su Yang became more and more excited as she spoke, and the tears that had been stopped with great difficulty flowed again. She tightly grasped Su Mu's hands. I almost went crazy, you know. I kept calling your number, but it never went through. I was so scared. I was so scared that I would never see you again. Su Mu hugged Su Yang, whose mood was becoming more and more unstable, tightly into his arms. I'm sorry. Don't leave me. A heartbreaking sob came from his arms. Well. The night fell silently. Su Mu walked into Su Yang's room with dinner in his hand. Sister, it's time to eat. A pillow flew over, and Su Mu dodged it with dinner in his hand. Su Yang sat on the bed, her big eyes still slightly red, shining, her seductive mouth pouted high. You didn't call me that just now. Su Mu suddenly felt a headache. Who would have thought that the Scarlet Rose commander, who was feared by countless people with abilities, would have such a side? He bowed and came to the bedside. Sister, it's time to eat. Su Yang snorted and turned her head away, with the corners of her mouth slightly raised where Su Mu couldn't see. After a slight hesitation, Su Mu asked tentatively, I'll feed you. Swish. Su Yang turned her head back and nodded vigorously, and her beautiful big eyes turned into crescents. A warm picture was formed in this way. A beautiful girl sat on the bed and enjoyed being fed by a very handsome boy. As she ate, the girl's red eyes sparkled with tears of happiness, and the boy gazed at her tenderly. A ray of moonlight sprinkled on the boy through the window, and a young man with silver hair and silver eyes appeared behind him, also gazing at the girl with great love. Su Yang was stunned for a moment, and seemed to have forgotten to swallow the food in her mouth and coughed violently. Su Mu hurriedly patted her back. Sister, what's wrong? Su Yang, who finally took a breath, rubbed her eyes, and the young man with silver hair and silver eyes disappeared. She shook her head lightly and replied thoughtfully, It's okay, I choked. Su Mu looked at the lean meat porridge he had carefully made strangely. Can this thing also choke? Shaked his head. Are you still eating? I can't eat anymore. As if to prove that she was full, Su Yang patted her flat belly. Then I'll clean up. Su Mu stood up and put away the dishes. A small hand suddenly pulled the hem of Su Mu's clothes. Su Mu was stunned and sat on the bed for a while. Sister, what's wrong? Su Yang lowered her head shyly. Today. Tonight you can. You can attack me at night. The old problem came back again. Su Mu rolled his eyes weakly and got up to clean up. HMPH, this little fool. Su Yang gritted her teeth and looked at Su Mu's leaving back, with a smile on the corner of her mouth. Suddenly, 2 red clouds attacked her beautiful cheeks. Su Yang covered her face with both hands. She was so embarrassed. She actually cried like this in front of him. Accompanied by countless strange thoughts, the expression on Su Yang's face kept changing. Over there, Su Mu, who was cleaning the dishes, stopped and looked up at the soft moonlight. For the first time in his life, the desire for strength struck his heart. Su Mu secretly swore in his heart that he would never let her worry again. Absolutely not. I want to protect her. Chapter 7 Join the Blood Rose. Young man. After finishing the tableware, Su Mu gently stroked his slightly painful shoulder, where Su Yang left a mark that might never disappear in her lifetime, and extended his index finger to touch the 7-character badge hidden under the collar of his shirt. He tiptoed to Su Yang's room. Perhaps she was tired of crying, and Su Yang had fallen asleep. He gently covered her with the quilt that had been kicked aside, and looked at her indescribably beautiful face gently. Mua. Su Yang murmured in a low voice. Su Mu was stunned for a moment, and when he looked at Su Yang intently, he found that she was actually talking in her sleep. She was really exhausted. Just when Su Mu felt sorry for Su Yang smacked her tempting red lips, and a trace of crystal liquid slid down the corner of her mouth. Mua. It's so big. Yang, I can't eat it anymore. Su Mu left Su Yang's room with a frown on his face. Such a classical dream talk. Su Mu couldn't bear it. Back in his room, Su Mu turned on the computer and retrieved the information he needed. Ability users use their own logical calculation ability and supernatural power to exert the most powerful strength. Su Mu is very confident in his calculation ability. Although his supernatural power index is only 27, he has almost passed the calculation courses in the academy with full marks. The first thing is to figure out the characteristics of his ability and what kind of ability it is. Liberation. A dark red flashed across the blade like horizontal line, and the upright 7 turned upside down. Silently feeling this powerful feeling, he gently stroked his silver hair, and his silver eyes stared at his right hand. A distorted silver light appeared in the center of his right hand. He picked up a long metal needle and touched the silver light. In an instant, the long metal needle dissipated into bits of stardust. Let's call it shattering for now. Su Mu muttered to himself, looked at the mirror conceitedly, and put on a cool expression. He took out the most common ability strength detector in Academy City from the drawer, and the green scanning line swept across the silver light. Ability strength. Characteristics: destruction and crushing of basic material structure. Ability index. Potential, S+. Seeing his ability judgment, Su Mu breathed a sigh of relief. At least the destructive power was guaranteed. Trying to control the silver light, Su Mu helplessly found that the silver light had no way to leave his body. Its characteristic was only destruction. He had originally fantasized that he could change the molecular structure at will like he. Now there is only one way to become stronger in front of Su Mu: physical skills. Su Mu has absolute confidence in control, but the silver light can't leave his body at all. No matter how good the control is, it's useless. He threw a punch casually, and heard a sudden sound. Su Mu was shocked. He casually threw a punch and there was such a loud sound. He drooled and stroked the muscles on his arm that were once just a dream for him. What am I doing? Su Mu shuddered and slapped himself. The next moment, Su Mu regretted it. He felt like a kinetic train running at full speed hit his head. The most ironic thing was that he dislocated his jaw by slapping himself. Su Mu groaned miserably, gently put his jaw back, and hurriedly looked at himself in the mirror. A bright red palm was ironically printed on his originally very stylish face. Damn it! At this moment, the 7-character badge turned back again, and the long silver hair quickly turned back to short black hair, and the silver eyes also turned black. A strong sense of powerlessness and pain came at the same time, and Su Mu reluctantly walked to the bed and sat down. What to do? He was not good at physical training at all. Because of his weak body, Su Mu had no habit of exercising. Go back to the academy in 2 days to apply for the physical training class. Go there to be abused. The physical fitness in the liberated state is indeed amazing, but the physical condition at ordinary times can't even beat a shrew. Su Yang's pretty face quietly flashed in her mind, and she shook her head vigorously. Although Su Yang is a LV6 superpower, her ability is biased towards control, and with her ability, she doesn't need to learn physical skills at all. Eh? Isn't she a major general? Let her recommend me to the army. Isn't it just right to go to the army to learn physical skills? What a good idea. Su Mu, who was complacent, didn't know that just because of his sudden whim, the extremely dark abyss had opened its door and warmly welcomed him. In the morning, Su Yang came to the kitchen sleepily, and Su Mu was making breakfast in full swing. Hearing the sound, Su Mu turned his head and saw Su Yang standing there in a large nightgown, with a large area of snow-white skin faintly visible. He was slightly stunned and said, "Huh? Sister, you got up. Wait a minute, breakfast will be ready soon." Su Yang rubbed her slightly confused eyes. "I know." I don't know what Su Yang muttered. She turned and left the kitchen. On the dining table, Su Mu looked at Su Yang, who was picking breakfast with lifeless eyes, with a smile on his face. This guy hasn't woken up yet. Sister. Su Mu called tentatively. Su Yang's body trembled, and the chopsticks in her hand almost stabbed into her nose. She glared at Su Mu, who was laughing secretly, and rubbed her eyes hard. What are you doing? Seeing that Su Yang had recovered, Su Mu hesitated for a moment, gritted his teeth. Sister, can you recommend me to join the army? Puff. Su Yang spit out a mouthful of rice in an unladylike manner, stared at Su Mu blankly, reached out and touched his forehead, and asked worriedly, "You don't have a fever? Do you want to join the army?" Reaching out and gently grabbing Su Yang's little hand that was pressed on his forehead, Su Mu slightly squeezed this soft and boneless little hand, and looked at her very firmly. "I want to become stronger, and I don't want to make you worry anymore." Muer. Su Yang looked at Su Mu excitedly, sighing in her heart that this kid finally got it. She grabbed Su Mu's hand and gazed at him tenderly. "Have you really decided?" "Yeah." Su Yang frowned slightly and looked up and down at Su Mu's little body, which was slightly stronger than a girl. "Even if I recommend you, ordinary armies won't want you." Su Mu also looked down at his small body with a sad face. Suddenly, Su Yang's eyes lit up, and a bad premonition struck Su Mu's heart. Su Yang came over excitedly. "Muer. Just join our bloody rose. Chapter 8. This killer is a little cute. Hey, Mua. What do you think? Su Yang's face flushed with excitement. If Mua joins Bloody Rose, can't I be with him every day? Su Mu frowned. Why Bloody Rose? I want to learn physical skills. Su Yang was slightly stunned, and the figure of a blonde girl flashed in her mind. She patted Su Mu's shoulder with a smile. Don't worry. Mua, you can trust me to do things. It's just physical skills. Only in our Bloody Rose can you learn real physical skills. Ordinary troops are scum. Su Mu rolled his eyes. Real physical skills. Isn't Bloody Rose a super special forces? Aren't all the people with humanoid nuclear warheads? Before Su Mu could come to his senses, Su Yang slapped her thigh and said, "This is reliable. Sister, with my strength, it's not good for me to join the country's top special forces." Su Yang blinked twice and snorted arrogantly, "Who dares to disagree as long as I say something?" A drop of cold sweat slid down Su Mu's forehead. He remembered the power hidden in Su Yang's seemingly weak body. Level 6 superpowers, a national treasure. The most fundamental and most basic power for the Dragon Feather Kingdom to maintain permanent neutrality and protect low-ability people. Su Yang looked at Su Mu with a complicated expression in confusion. What's wrong? Sister, I remember you told me that Blood Rose doesn't accept men, right? Su Yang was stunned and touched her chin suspiciously. Huh? It seems there is such a rule. A lewd handsome face passed through her heart, and Su Yang suddenly realized, yes. We have two special forces of people with special abilities in Longyu Kingdom, and the other is a secret force. Secret force. Su Yang smiled mysteriously. Civilians have no right to know. Because male and female people with special abilities are prone to conflicts, there is such a force. Su Mu's eyes lit up. Then I'll join that force. Bang. Su Yang slammed the table hard. Absolutely not. How can you join that barbaric force? And they only accept people with special abilities above level 5. Level 5. Su Mu was like a deflated ball. Su Yang rolled her eyes and approached him with a smile. Mua, why don't you join us, Bloody Rose? I can introduce you to a person who specializes in physical skills. Specializes in physical skills. Su Yang proudly puffed out her chest like a little swan. The sister of Bloody Rose who is responsible for assassination happens to stay at the headquarters. As long as you join us, I can bring her back to train you. But Bloody Rose doesn't recruit male people with abilities. Su Mu asked hesitantly. A superpower person responsible for assassination made Su Mu very excited. Su Yang looked Su Mu up and down with a smile. What does it matter? I can just report your gender as female. Do you think those old men in the Ministry of Defense dare to blame me? Su Mu. In the evening, in the Su family compound. Under Su Mu's tingling eyes, a military-armed helicopter with the Bloody Rose emblem appeared shakily in the sky above his head. When everyone was wondering if it would fall, it fell directly. That's right. It fell. Bang. With a loud noise, a big pit appeared in the yard, and in the pit, an armed helicopter with its propeller still spinning wildly was shaking constantly. Under Su Mu's black eyes, a snow-white thigh kicked the side door of the helicopter away, and Su Yang crawled out with a dusty face, and her originally fair skin looked so embarrassed. Broken thing. She pouted and kicked the helicopter hard. The golden arc of electricity spread all over the helicopter with the contact of her beautiful legs, and the wildly rotating propeller finally stopped. Sister. Are you useless? Su Mu walked over. Su Yang was stunned, and wiped her black face with her sleeves casually, revealing a bright smile. Muer. You know I can't do anything with machinery. Indeed, from childhood to adulthood, all the items that used electricity in Su Yang's hands were either short-circuited or exploded. Anyway, none of them had a good end. Su Mu laughed dryly and walked forward to wipe her black face. Sister, why did you come back in a helicopter? Huh. Su Yang was stunned, and took out a Bloody Rose badge from her pocket with a smile and stuffed it into his hand. Look. I got it for you. Looking down at the metal badge with Su Mu engraved on the back, Su Mu smiled bitterly. What's this? Does it mean that I am a woman in the files of the Ministry of National Defense? By the way, Mua, I brought your teacher back too. Su Yang excitedly pulled his hand. Teacher. Su Mu looked around in confusion. No one? Su Yang blinked twice, and suddenly looked at the helicopter that was constantly emitting smoke and exclaimed, Michelle. Are you okay? Major General. I'm fine. A weak female voice came. I seem to be stuck. Su Yang rolled her eyes and pinched the innocent Su Mu with a look of regret. Idiot. Don't you know how to use your ability? I'm sorry. I forgot. Su Mu only felt that the space in front of him was distorted, and a petite figure appeared in front of the two of them, with golden hip-length wavy hair, a burnt and tattered gothic Lolita outfit, a pair of big blue eyes full of tears on the black and white little face. Major General. The little loli trotted over with a sad face, grabbed Su Yang's hand, hid behind her and made a face at Su Mu. Su Mu's mouth twitched. Killer. Loli? Sister, is this the child you mentioned? Su Yang was stunned, and casually pulled Michelle, who was hiding behind her, in front of her. She pressed Michelle, who was about to shrink back, with her hand, and a charming smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Mua, let me introduce her to you. She is not a child, she is the same age as you. She is Michelle, who is in charge of assassination in our Blood Rose. Her ability is space movement, level 5. Su Mu looked at Michelle, who was looking at him in horror, speechlessly. Killer? No matter how you look at her, she is a timid little loli. A level 5 space movement ability user was actually stuck. Chapter 9: A White Salted Pig Hand. Alas. Su Mu helplessly supported his chin with one hand, watching the two beauties, one big and one small, devouring all kinds of food at a whirlwind speed. Suddenly, a bitter smile appeared on the corner of his mouth, and Su Mu thought helplessly, why am I so naive? I actually believed in Su Yang, who has never been reliable since childhood, in this matter. A small hand holding a rice bowl almost poked Su Mu's face, and a crisp and slightly childish baby voice came, another bowl. Su Mu turned his head and looked at Michelle, who had already washed up with Su Yang, with rice grains on her face and shining eyes. He sighed again, handed a bowl of rice to Michelle, and supported his chin with one hand and stared at Michelle, who was eating fiercely. Su Mu suspected that Michelle's ability to move in space was concentrated on the stomach. Par. Michelle slammed her chopsticks heavily on the table. Major General. I'm full. Su Yang, who was standing by, gently wiped the rice off her face. An inexplicable sour taste hit Su Mu's heart, and he couldn't help but complain secretly, did this guy eat with his face slammed in the bowl? There was so much on his face. Michelle smiled innocently at Su Mu. Sister, your dishes are so delicious. Sister. The hand that supported her chin slipped, and Su Mu's chin almost hit the table. Su Yang, who was standing by, laughed so hard that her body shook, and gently touched Michelle's little head, and said to Michelle earnestly, little fool, don't talk nonsense. Mua is a boy. Boy. Michelle's eyes widened, and her face showed disbelief. Su Mu rolled his eyes, knowing that he could not get any results from the argument, and got up to clean up the dishes. Major General, you want to fool me again? How can there be such a pretty boy? Michelle pouted in dissatisfaction. It can be seen that she is often fooled by Su Yang. Su Yang shrugged indifferently. If you don't believe it, forget it. Michelle looked at Su Mu, who was cleaning the dishes beside her. Are you really a boy? No, I'm a man. Su Mu looked at Michelle, who was pouting, and cursed her to meet a weird uncle when she went out. TSK. I don't believe it. Prove it to me. Michelle grabbed Su Mu's sleeve. Su Yang smiled knowingly, and the most basic problem was solved. Michelle was shy. If she wanted to train Mu, she had to be able to talk. Su Mu raised his hand and found that the little girl was surprisingly strong. He said unhappily, how can you prove this? Let go. No, you must prove it to me. Humph. Michelle pouted her lips and looked at Su Mu up and down with wide eyes, as if trying to find some flaws. Oh, how come? Su Mu's impatient words stopped abruptly. He only felt his lower body tighten. He looked down and saw a white and tender little hand covering his crotch. The three of them were petrified at the same time. A shrill scream sounded. Su Mu jumped up and retreated away from Michelle cautiously. It's really a man. Michelle looked at her salty hands in disbelief. Su Yang rushed over viciously and hugged poor Michelle in her arms, hit her head hard, and tore her little face into a big pancake. Su Yang kept wailing, oh my God. You little bastard. That's the virgin land I haven't touched. How can you compensate me? Major General, I was wrong. It hurts. Michelle cried loudly. Su Mu rolled his eyes after recovering. What the hell is this? He was actually harassed for no reason. Looking at Michelle, who was struggling in Su Yang's arms, it seems that he is not at a disadvantage. Su Mu's heart fell endlessly after a sudden shock. Why do I have such thoughts? Am I a low-liter control? I don't want it. Michelle looked at Su Mu pitifully. Brother Mu, help. Just when Su Mu was about to leave, he stood up instantly. This was the first time in his life that someone affirmed him. Even his unreliable parents raised him as a daughter. Sister, let her go. Su Yang was stunned, showing her cute little tiger teeth and looking at Su Mu with shining eyes. If you let me touch her, I will let her go. Su Mu rolled his eyes and decisively turned his head to leave the room that made his worldview collapse. After Su Mu left, Su Yang continued to torture Michelle, who looked innocent. Little bastard. How does it feel? Tell the truth. Michelle stared at her little hand blankly, and then stared at Su Yang blankly. Why is she so nervous? Blinking twice, Michelle's little thoughts flew away like a bird. For her, the pain on the body is not as good as the gossip of the Major General. That terrible Major General. That charming Major General. The gossip of the Major General who never looks at any man straight in the eye. Su Yang's face turned red for no reason when she was looked at by Michelle, and the strength in her hands could not help but become much weaker. Major General, let Michelle go. Why? Michelle smiled smugly. If you don't let me go, I'll tell my sisters that the Major General has a mistress. Then I'll let you go for now. Su Mu, who hadn't walked far, stumbled and almost fell, smiled bitterly and shook his head. What's the big deal? It's enough to have one funny guy at home. Another one. Expect her to train herself. Forget it. Look at her small body. Many weird uncles will like her. Late at night, the three of them sat in the living room. Su Yang cleared her throat. The blood rose regular meeting will begin now. Michelle's face was stern. Su Mu, the Major General has told me, do you want to learn my physical skills? Looking at Michelle, who seemed to have changed, Su Mu hesitated. Can you do it? Michelle proudly puffed up her chest and snorted. I am the chief killer of the Dragon Feather Kingdom. How can I not be good at physical skills? She glanced at Su Mu with dissatisfaction, who was full of disbelief on his face, and the innocent expression on Michelle's face disappeared, looking at Su Mu coldly. Su Mu felt his whole body tense, and a feeling of being stared at by a prehistoric beast filled Su Mu's body. Su Yang stretched out a green finger and flicked it on Michelle's forehead. Michelle, put away your murderous intent. The creepy feeling disappeared instantly. Michelle hugged her head with tears in her eyes, looked at Su Yang pitifully, and pursed her lips aggrievedly. Major General. For a moment, Su Mu seemed to see the shadow of Su Yang in her, with the same ever-changing personality. Su Yang rolled her eyes over there. She knew Michelle best. After all, she was a subordinate she trained by hand. Okay, show Mu a few tricks, don't make trouble. Michelle said, oh, her face turned cold, and she punched the table where the three of them were sitting. The tender little arm went through the table like a bayonet and directly pierced into the ground. Su Mu's eyes almost popped out, so fierce. Chapter 10 Major General, let's compete fairly. He, do you believe me now? Michelle regained her innocent look, and her nose seemed to grow a little longer like Pinocchio in the ancient fairy tale. Su Mu nodded heavily. Su Yang clapped her hands gently. Then, Mu, show Michelle your ability so that she can formulate a training direction for you. My ability? Su Mu looked at Su Yang in confusion. What's the difference between looking at his pitiful ability index and not looking at it? Michelle also showed a very interested look. Brother Mu, the Major General is right. I have several ancient physical skills suitable for people with different abilities. Show me your ability. As if to prove herself, Michelle waved her hand, and the wall on the side sank down, revealing a huge handprint, which was the power of space. Without looking at the sank wall on the side, Su Mu only cared about the word Brother Mu. A huge sense of happiness filled his heart. Su Mu's face suddenly turned bitter. Damn it. I'm not really a Lolita complex. Su Mu casually pulled out a piece of paper and was about to smash it. Stop. Su Mu looked at Su Yang in confusion. What's wrong, sister? Use that. Su Yang pointed to the 7-character badge hidden under his shirt collar. Sister, why are you? Do you think Mom and Dad won't tell me about this? Su Yang rolled her eyes. Let it go and show me. I haven't seen it yet. Su Mu was depressed. He wanted to hide it, but he ignored the most fundamental problem. There's no reason for Su Yang not to know this badge. Michelle scratched her head, not knowing what was going on. what are you talking about? Su Mu gently turned out the 7-character badge under his collar. Let it go. A red light flashed, and Michelle stared at the 7 in disbelief as it turned upside down. Su Mu's short black hair quickly grew longer and turned into silver, and his black eyes also turned into a seemingly cold silver. His thin body magically grew taller and became much stronger. Wow! My most handsome Mu'er. Su Yang looked at the liberated Su Mu with shining eyes. Michelle stared at the changes in Su Mu in a daze, looking at the originally delicate face that was now cold and handsome, and little stars suddenly appeared in her big watery eyes. My Prince Charming. Su Yang's face turned black and she glared at Michelle fiercely. What did you say? Mu'er is my favorite. Michelle's pupils shrank, and she looked at Su Yang fearfully, and then looked at Su Mu with a cold face. She didn't know where she got the courage from and snorted coldly, Major General, let's compete fairly. Just you? Compete with me. Su Yang proudly straightened her chest like a small hill. Michelle was stunned, looked down at her airport, and flattened her mouth. I will fight you. The short Michelle jumped up and jumped towards Su Yang with her teeth and claws bared. Facts prove that the power of love is great. The courage to challenge is commendable. But the truth is always cruel. A tiny arc flashed from Su Yang's forehead and pierced Michelle's buttocks fiercely, causing Michelle to roll on the ground with a squeak of pain. Su Mu looked at the two of them speechlessly. He was not worried that something would happen between them. It could be seen that neither of them had any real intention to hurt each other, but it seemed that his days would be very dark in the future. Stop it. A cold voice came out of Su Mu's mouth. The three of them were stunned at the same time, even Su Mu was stunned. Is this voice without any emotion really me? Looking at the two beauties, one big and one small, sitting there like good babies, Su Mu couldn't help but become narcissistic, but now seemed not to be the time to be narcissistic. Look, this is my power after liberation. Su Mu gently stroked the table that was pierced by Michelle, and punched the metal bookshelf on the side. The table and the bookshelf turned into starlight at the same time, and there was not even any dust left on the ground. Idle. You are a natural killer. Michelle jumped up from the ground and jumped towards Su Mu. Michelle, you are too cunning. Su Yang looked at Su Mu in exasperation and instinctively opened her arms to catch Michelle. How could she lose to this little girl? Mu'er. Su Yang cried out and threw herself at Su Mu unwillingly. Hey! No! Su Mu screamed. He had tried many times. Even if he did not take the initiative to activate his ability, except for the clothes he wore, fragile things like cloth would basically be crushed when they touched him in the released state. When Michelle opened her arms and hung on Su Mu's neck, Su Yang also hugged his arms unwillingly. A breeze blew, and a faint chill hit the two women's bodies. The two women looked down at their naked bodies at the same time. Ah! The screams like a chorus resounded throughout the night sky. Tonight, it is destined to be sleepless. Half an hour later, Su Mu knelt there listlessly like a sinner, with two blood-red palm prints, one large and one small, on both sides of his delicate face. What a loss! Michelle, wearing a loose shirt, looked blankly ahead. Su Yang changed into a set of pajamas and sat aside, looking at Michelle proudly. Little girl, you've suffered a loss. You dare to compete with me? Michelle pouted and said unhappily, you've also been seen naked. TSK, I took a bath with Mu'er when I was a child. He saw me naked a long time ago. Besides, I will be his sooner or later. He saw me. A dead pig is not afraid of boiling water. This ancient saying is fully reflected in Su Yang. You don't care and you hit me. Su Mu muttered in a low voice with dissatisfaction. Mu'er, what did you just say? A dangerous smile bloomed on Su Yang's beautiful face. Nothing. No. You have to take responsibility. Michelle glared at Su Mu fiercely. Nonsense, Mu'er can only marry me. Su Yang glared at Michelle fiercely. But he saw me naked. Michelle shouted unwillingly. TSK, he saw me naked. What's so good about it? Su Yang looked up and down at Michelle's small body with contempt. Although both women knew that this matter would not have any results, Michelle was unwilling, while Su Yang would not show weakness to Su Mu, and their starting points were similar. Su Mu was the only one who was pitiful, and the abyss of blood and darkness seemed to have begun to approach. Why is it like this? Michelle wailed in her heart. Does this count as inviting a wolf into their house? Su Yang stared at Michelle blankly. Are my good days over? Su Mu looked at the two women with lifeless eyes. The next day, the two women, who were already good friends, reached an agreement. On the premise that Su Mu was not unfaithful, the two women competed fairly. As for Su Mu's fickleness, the two of them didn't mind letting him experience what purgatory was like. In the following days, Michelle taught Su Mu all kinds of physical skills with all her heart, while Su Yang watched him closely. Chapter 11. Little sister, Uncle will take you to see the goldfish. A month has passed in a blink of an eye. Except for the fact that the two girls were fighting over the ownership of Su Mu, they were almost always together. Su Mu was also excited about the changes in his body. It was probably because he would be liberated several times a day, and his originally delicate face had a hint of masculinity. What made Su Mu the happiest was that his originally thin body had become slightly thicker. Although he still looked delicate, at least he had muscles that he had never dared to hope for. In addition, after more than a month of training, Su Mu's physical fitness and combat effectiveness rose like a rocket. In Michelle's words, Su Mu, who was not using his abilities and was not in a liberated state, could easily deal with several incapable people. Of course, all this credit should be attributed to Michelle's frequent use of space ability to find some fierce playmates for Su Mu at the zoo. She called it, "Only with pressure can one grow." On this day, Su Mu, who was in a good mood, brought two beauties, one big and one small, to the only amusement park for people with special abilities in the world. Wow! Michelle's eyes lit up at the various entertainment facilities. After all, even in the Dragon Feather Kingdom, most entertainment venues prohibit people with special abilities from entering, especially people with superpowers like her. Su Mu looked at Michelle, who was jumping all the way speechlessly, wondering if this girl was really 18 years old. Su Yang walked beside him quietly, holding his arm, as quiet as a gentle and elegant beauty, and immediately attracted the gazes of countless passers-by. He looked at Su Yang strangely. "Sister, don't you want to play?" Su Yang had a gentle smile on her face. "Do you think I look like a child?" Su Mu nodded heavily, and then a sharp pain came from his waist and abdomen. Su Yang's little hand was hidden under the arms of the two people and pinched them fiercely, while her face was still a harmless smile. A flash of electric arc stifled Su Mu's miserable groan. Su Yang looked around, and from time to time she showed a friendly smile to the passers-by who looked over here, and whispered, "I'll settle the score with you when I get back." With a twitch in the corner of her mouth, Su Mu suddenly realized, yes. My sister is just a 20-year-old girl. Although she is lawless at home, she is still a girl who loves face when she goes out. Looking around, countless uncles looked at Su Yang, with green light in their eyes. Su Mu's possessiveness as a man instantly erupted, and he stretched out his hand to hug Su Yang's slender waist and hugged her into his arms. "R!" Su Yang exclaimed softly, looked at Su Mu, who turned his head to look at the side with a slightly red face, pursed his lips, and put on a happy smile. "R! Major General! You are too cunning." Michelle discovered the situation of the two people here. How can this be tolerated? Michelle swished to the other side, grabbed Su Mu's hand and put it on her waist, but she was a little short. Her little mouth flattened, and her big eyes quickly filled with tears. Su Yang smiled bitterly, left Su Mu's arms, and also walked to the other side to pull Michelle's hand, gently tapping her smooth forehead. "Little fool, just know how to cry." Michelle looked at Su Yang and Su Mu, who were holding her on the left and right. "Huh, I didn't cry." Tenderly helping Michelle to tidy up her slightly messy golden hair, Su Yang thought helplessly, "Is this my own fault?" Mu finally. Su Mu looked at Michelle, who looked aggrieved, and couldn't help wondering if this guy was a killer. "Huh? Su Mu." A familiar male voice came. Su Mu was stunned, and looked up, and it turned out to be Hee. Hee looked at Su Mu and a beautiful girl holding a blonde girl on each side, and suddenly exclaimed, "Su Mu! You bastard! You didn't even tell me that you had a daughter." Then Hee flew out, leaving a human-shaped hole on a haunted house. Michelle was furious and wanted to chase in. She looked up at the blood-red words, "haunted house," her pupils shrank, and she hid behind Su Mu with a cry. "Hey, what's the matter?" The dusty Hee took the tissue from Su Mu. "Who told you to always make such meaningless jokes?" Su Mu said unhappily. Su Yang gently pushed Michelle over there, and the little girl flattened her mouth. "I'm sorry." Hee was stunned for a moment, smiled and waved his hand. "It's okay, it's okay." "Hee, what are you doing here?" Su Mu looked at him strangely. A grown man came to the amusement park alone. "Of course I'm here to work. Are you here to have fun?" After giving Su Mu a big eye roll, He looked at Su Yang, who was standing quietly aside with great interest. This beautiful lady is Su Yang, Su Mu's girlfriend, right? Girlfriend. Su Yang's eyes lit up, and she gave He a look that said you have good taste, and nodded gently. Hello, my name is Su Yang. He, don't talk nonsense. She is my sister. Su Mu explained with sweat all over his forehead. Michelle also shouted, yes, yes. I am his girlfriend. He rolled his eyes and looked at Michelle with interest. You? Your name is Su Yang? I know that Su Mu has been secretly in love with his sister for a long time. Mua. Su Yang looked over gently. Mua really likes me. Su Mu was sweating profusely and resisted the urge to throw He, who was winking at him, back to the haunted house. He, don't talk nonsense. He shrugged indifferently, looked at Michelle, who looked unwilling, and laughed secretly in his heart. This is a tactic. Su Mu, it's enough for you to have such a beautiful sister. Let me have such a top-notch little Lolita. Big tears flowed from Michelle's eyes. Brother Mu. He squatted down with a smile and touched Michelle's head. Don't cry. Let's ignore Su Mu. Uncle will take you to see the goldfish, okay? What is a goldfish? Michelle asked curiously, rubbing her big eyes. Hey. He was stunned. What is a goldfish? It seems to be an ancient ornamental fish. It has long been extinct. This sentence is a popular code word for ancient Lolita control. Before he could react, a gust of cold wind blew across his lower body. In an instant, he seemed to see the silver-haired and silver-eyed bastard from a month ago. He instinctively looked down, and screams resounded throughout the sky. Su Yang cooperated very well and screamed, rogue. As for Michelle, do I need to hint? Tears flew like they were free, pervert. How can this be tolerated? The uncles, young men, and teenagers around him directly abandoned their daughters, girlfriends, and wives, and surrounded him eagerly. Su Mu smiled evilly and touched Michelle's head, who was crying loudly, let's go back. Chapter 12. Queen's sister Chu Elian. After poor He was beaten up, he was invited to the Ability Supervisory Bureau for being too exposed in public places, and the culprit Su Mu was carrying Michelle on his back and walking home step by step. The little girl seemed to be too frightened and fell asleep on his back. Sister. What's wrong? Su Yang, who was walking on the side, looked at Su Mu, who was sweating profusely, in confusion. What did this girl eat to grow so big? So heavy? Su Mu looked back at Michelle, who was sleeping soundly on his back. She had a trace of crystal saliva hanging from the corner of her mouth, and she kept smacking her lips from time to time. A foodie would only dream what a foodie should dream. Su Yang smiled slightly. Let me carry her on my back. How can that be possible? Su Mu wiped the sweat from his forehead and walked forward quickly. Mua, so considerate. Su Yang looked at Su Mu's back and exhaled softly, with a happy smile on her lips, thinking, maybe Michelle's arrival will add some fun to our lives. Should I ask the other three sisters to come together? I shook my head vigorously to get rid of this unrealistic idea. Let's not talk about whether the sisters are willing to come. What if they snatch Mua from me like Michelle? Su Yang frowned slightly and muttered, it's better not to tell them. When Su Mu saw the warm little nest of his home from afar, he was about to collapse. After roughly estimating the distance, Su Mu gritted his teeth, took out the 7-character badge under his collar and was about to release. Su Yang was stunned. Mua, what are you doing? Oh. Su Mu slapped his head. He forgot that if he released Michelle on his back, he would probably run naked again, this time in public. Michelle would probably kill him as soon as she woke up. When the almost collapsed Su Mu threw Michelle on the bed at home, he smacked his lips, turned over, hugged a pillow and continued to sleep soundly. His eyes turned upward habitually, and the 2 white tender legs exposed under the gothic Lolita outfit were ruthlessly ignored by Su Mu. If it was Su Yang's thigh, he might have taken a second look. At this time, Su Yang walked in. Mua, are you ready? Yes, I'm ready. I'll go cook. Really? I just praised you for being considerate. Su Yang glared at Su Mu with both anger and amusement, and casually covered Michelle with a blanket. Su Mu scratched the back of his head awkwardly and smiled foolishly. The two looked at each other in silence, and inexplicable feelings grew quietly. I don't know how long it took when the two made a decision at the same time. Ding, ding, ding. 3 soft sounds. The blood-red rose badges of the 3 people flashed a strange red light. Hey! What's going on? Su Mu puzzledly took out the badge from under the other collar. Well, it seems to be an emergency contact. Su Yang smiled bitterly. The blood-red rose badge is not only a symbol, but also a very small contact circle. The location of each member can be known through the headquarters network. Michelle, who was in a dream, grabbed the badge on her collar and threw it into the trash can under Su Mu's frowning eyes, then turned over and continued to sleep soundly. Su Yang sighed, stretched out a green finger and tapped the bloody rose badge, communication permission. A red light shot out from the badge, and a three-dimensional image was formed in an instant. In the image, a beautiful woman with a mature charm stood there. The beautiful woman looked at Su Yang and then at Su Mu, and then turned her head to look at Michelle, who was dreaming. Her pretty face turned cold. Michelle. It was unknown what kind of magic the cold voice had. Michelle, who was invincible in Su Mu's eyes, shuddered. "R." She jumped up from the bed with a sound, turned her head to cast a questioning look at Su Yang, but found that Su Yang kept laughing dryly at the beautiful woman in the image. "Sister Elian." Michelle seemed to have seen something terrible and her eyes almost fell out. She hid behind Su Mu intentionally or unintentionally. The beauty's eyes naturally went to Su Mu, and she looked at the bloody rose badge on Su Mu's collar in confusion. "Newcomer. Are you a man? This beauty, you have good taste." Su Mu shouted in his heart, "Long live understanding." Su Yang smiled awkwardly. "Muer, this is Chu Elian, our bloody rose's ability to process information and collect intelligence. The ability is the information tree, the most powerful hacker in Longyu Kingdom." "Hello, Sister Elian." Chu Elian glanced at Su Mu, nodded slightly, frowned and said to Su Yang, "Major General, you are getting more and more outrageous. You took Michelle, who was stationed at the headquarters, away without saying a word, and let a man join our department. The Ministry of National Defense is making a fuss." Su Yang laughed dryly and rubbed her hands, pulled Su Mu over and blocked him in front of her. "What, love sister, do not want to ignore the idiot of the Ministry of Defense. This is my brother Su Mu. Can you drink tea in the image?" Su Yang, who was doubtful in Su Yang, who was shielded with a shield. Later Su Yang secretly said to Su Mu, "Muer, you go. Say something good. Conscious sister is the steward of our blood roses, offend. This is related to our pocket money." Su Mu turned his eyes. What did this have to do with pocket money? But I still understood the general meaning. This beauty is the core of the bloody rose, similar to the head of a family. No wonder. If it were Su Yang's temper, the bloody rose would probably disintegrate the next day. Coupled with Michelle, this weird killer, the bloody rose would probably be a criminal group. The three of them were silent at the same time. Chu Elian sighed and glared at Su Yang like a mother scolding her daughter. "Major General, if you keep making trouble like this, I can't stand the pressure from the Ministry of National Defense." Su Yang lowered her head in grievance and pinched the corner of Su Mu's clothes. "What is this? Naked hint?" Su Mu laughed awkwardly and mustered up the courage to say, "Sister Elian, don't blame my sister. I insisted on joining the bloody rose." Chu Elian looked Su Mu up and down. "Forget it, just join. I'm not the commander of this team anyway." "Sister Elian, you are so nice." Su Yang cheered and hugged Su Mu. Chu Elian glanced at Su Yang strangely. Although she always knew that Su Yang liked her younger brother, she didn't expect that she was so obsessed with her younger brother. This little bastard who looked like a woman was so charming? She shook her head slightly and drove away the strange thoughts in her head. "Major General, I didn't want to disturb you, but you haven't been back to the headquarters for a month, and you took Michelle away. There is a mission that needs someone to handle it. Ning Jing is not in the country, so I can only contact you." Chapter 13 Protecting the Big Star. "Isn't Ruoi in China?" Su Yang muttered dissatisfiedly. She was very satisfied staying at home for a month. It's great to tease Muer and Michelle every day. "Ruoi?" Su Mu was stunned for a moment, as if he had heard it somewhere before. Michelle jumped up again and shouted, "Yes, yes. Sister Elian, Ruoi is also in China. Just send her over." Chu Elian glared at Michelle fiercely, and watched with satisfaction as the little girl shrank back pitifully. She turned her head and looked at Su Yang, the unreliable Major General, speechlessly. "Major General, the actual mission target is Lin Ruoi." "Lin Ruoi? The big star Lin Ruoi?" Su Mu exclaimed, and a warm and sunny energetic girl appeared in Su Mu's mind. "Lin Ruoi is the most popular singer in Longyu Kingdom. It seems that she will have a concert in the Academy City this week." Hey, Mua, you also know Lin Ruoi. She is a member of our Blood Rose. Her ability is to control sound. Su Yang explained mischievously. Chu Ilian rolled her eyes. Major General. I know Su Mu is your brother, but you don't have to tell him the abilities of each of us. It doesn't matter. Mua won't be interested in you. Mua, right? Su Yang blinked at Su Mu. How could Su Mu not understand? His sister was afraid of being at a disadvantage. He immediately patted his chest and assured, Sister Ilian, don't worry, I will never have any improper thoughts about you. As soon as he finished speaking, Su Mu felt that this was getting more and more wrong. It seemed that he was led into a ditch by Su Yang. Michelle glared at Su Mu fiercely. Chu Ilian held her forehead. Oh my god. Taking care of you for big and small demons is enough of a headache for me, and now there is another boy with a brain problem. Sister Ilian, tell me about the mission. Su Yang looked at Su Mu with satisfaction. Would Chu Ilian be interested in Mua now? Oh, this is what happened. Chu Ilian took out a report and looked at the three people and said, tomorrow Ruori will hold a concert in the college city. I received reliable information that the ability criminal gang Pandora attempted to kidnap Ruori, so I want to ask the Major General to protect Ruori. Pandora. Su Yang blinked twice in confusion, and Su Mu beside her was even more confused. Chu Ilian looked at Su Yang speechlessly. Major General. Can you put some of your mind on work? Pandora, a notorious criminal gang of people with special abilities, is wanted in countries around the world and often engages in the business of trafficking young girls. Michelle's face was gloomy, and her killer temperament was undoubtedly revealed. Su Yang snapped her fingers with a snap. I remember, it's the criminal gang that trafficked Michelle before. Su Mu was just wondering how Michelle awakened. It turned out that this guy had been trafficked. Indeed. Blonde little loli, many uncles like this tune. Under Su Mu's strange eyes, Michelle's face turned red, as if the actual murderous aura had disappeared. Well, it's that criminal gang. I heard that several troublesome people with special abilities have joined them recently, so I can only trouble the Major General to make a trip. Chu Ilian nodded in the video. Su Yang nodded, her pretty face turned cold. Okay, I haven't taken action for a long time anyway, let them know who is targeting our sisters. Don't I well? The three women said in unison. Su Mu's mouth twitched. Sister? Then what am I? Well, I'll take my leave first. Chu Ilian glanced at Su Mu and turned off the video. In the Blood Rose headquarters that no one could see, Chu Ilian lowered her head and her pretty face blushed for no reason. It's him. Thoughts went back to a few years ago. A boy who looked like a girl sent a capable girl who had a car accident to their hospital under the contemptuous eyes of countless powerless people. Chu Ilian forced herself to suppress the excitement in her heart and sighed softly. The world is really small. A strange smile hung on the corner of her mouth. Major General, don't try to monopolize him. If Su Yang saw it, she would definitely go crazy, but unfortunately she didn't see it. Su Mu, who had long forgotten about this matter, was listening to Michelle's introduction of Pandora unconsciously, and the abyss of blood and darkness quietly pulled him in one step. 1 hour later. These are probably the general situation of Pandora. Michelle, who was dry-mouthed, finally stopped her speech. Su Yang, with lifeless eyes, was stunned for a moment. Finished. Su Mu was speechless. I guess she didn't hear anything? He looked at Michelle strangely. This little girl must have suffered a lot at that time, otherwise how could she understand so much? The abilities of the main members were so clear. Michelle felt the gaze from Su Mu, pursed her lips in dissatisfaction, and showed a dangerous smile. What do you think? No. Su Mu shook his head like a rattle. Mua, it's time to verify your training results. You can go too. Su Yang suggested with a smile. Me? The Major General is right. No matter how much you train, you are not a good soldier if you have never been on the battlefield. Michelle jumped excitedly. Okay. Su Mu sighed. Now that he knew, he would not let Su Yang go alone. The other party was a kidnapper. Can he be assured? He was incompetent before, but it is different now. He knows his own strength. Su Mu is full of confidence now. As if sensing what Su Mu was thinking, Su Yang felt warm in her heart. Let me tell you in advance, Muer. If you meet someone from Pandora, don't hold back. Michelle's face also turned cold. Kindness to the enemy is cruelty to yourself. As if to increase the deterrent effect of this sentence, Michelle waved her hand, and a huge palm print was printed on the wall leading to Su Mu's room. The wall collapsed with a roar. Su Yang hit Michelle's head hard, gritting her teeth and said, "Don't mess around in other people's homes." She looked up at Su Mu's room and glared at the innocent little girl again. "You did it on purpose, didn't you? You sleep with me tonight." After that, Su Yang carried Michelle and ran to her room. No. Brother Mu, save me. Michelle, who was held in Su Yang's hand, kept struggling, and strange fluctuations flashed, and she was about to use her ability to teleport out. Fine arcs of electricity instantly visited her but under her black miniskirt. Su Mu's scalp tingled as he watched Su Yang carry the twitching Michelle into his room. He sighed softly, liberation. He touched his strong muscles proudly and began to destroy the wall fragments on the ground resignedly. Chapter 14 Sisters' Breasts. According to the information transmitted by Chu Ilian, the three of them got up early the next morning to prepare to meet up with Lin Ruoyi. Ding! A light sound came from Su Mu's pocket as he was about to go out. He took out the communicator and glanced at it. The contact number of Su Mu's class teacher at Fenghua College was flashing wildly, and he decisively hung up the call. Within less than a second, the avatar of the mature young woman flashed wildly again. Su Mu sighed softly and connected the call. A plump young woman appeared in the image displayed by the communicator, and this person was Yang Xiqian, Su Mu's class teacher at Fenghua College. Yang Xiqian in the video was slightly stunned when she saw the bloody rose badge on Su Mu's collar. Her originally aggressive expression became extremely strange. "Su Mu, have you finally awakened?" Su Mu still didn't understand Yang Xiqian's words after tasting them doubtfully. He then looked down at his collar along the line of sight of the person in the video, and the bloody rose badge came into view. Su Mu covered the badge with a dry laugh. "Class teacher, what's the matter?" Yang Xiqian meaningfully withdrew her gaze from Su Mu's collar and took a deep breath. "Su Mu, are you going to go against the will of heaven? You haven't been to class for a few days. Do you want me to ask the people in the discipline department to bring you back?" The thunderous words made Su Mu's mouth twitch. The discipline department seemed to have a business of supervising the students under observation and punishment to report to the college every day. As for the title of the student under observation and punishment, as a class teacher, wouldn't it be better to just give yourself one? This class teacher is good in every way. She is pretty and has a rich family. But she is a little too responsible. In fact, Su Mu has been ready to be scolded after not going to the academy for more than a month, but he didn't expect it to be so soon. Because his ability is limited by the system developed by his adoptive parents, the problem of low ability index is clear. Su Mu didn't plan to go back to class, but he still had to perfunctorily, right? After all, she is the class teacher who has taken care of him for several years, right? Taking a step back, if there is any problem at home, the academy is a very good refuge, right? Su Mu helplessly spread his hands. "The most beautiful, gentle, generous, and lovely class teacher, listen to me. I have a reason." Yang Xiqian's originally fierce face suddenly became red, as if Su Mu's praise made her very happy. She smiled and touched her fair face, and said earnestly, "Su Mu, you are getting sweeter and sweeter. Well, tell me your reason." Su Mu paused, his brain started to work quickly, and in the blink of an eye, Su Mu said shyly, "Dear class teacher, actually my sister is sick, I have to take care of her at home." Su Mu's sister. I heard she is a big beauty. It seemed that she was the one who brought Su Mu to the college to register. Yang Xiqian's face relaxed. "Is your sister seriously ill? Really, just tell me about this kind of thing. You made me worry about your studies." "Oh. My sister is much better, thank you class teacher." Just then Su Yang's excited voice came over. "Mua, are you okay?" Yang Xiqian blinked in confusion. Su Mu's sister's voice sounded so full of energy. A woman's keen intuition allowed her to taste the taste of happiness in Su Yang's voice, but she didn't seem to be sick. "Class teacher, my sister called me, let's do this for now, I'm going to take care of her." Before Yang Xiqian figured it out, Su Mu couldn't wait to hang up the phone and let out a long sigh. This was really terrible. "Mua, are you okay?" Su Yang walked in. "Yeah. I'm okay." "Wow. Mua." Su Yang's eyes were full of stars, and she looked at Su Mu in a suit with infinite expectation. Michelle's little head popped out from behind Su Yang and muttered, "He's quite handsome. I wonder if he'll be handsome after liberation." Su Yang's eyes lit up, and she felt that Michelle's words made sense. Stop messing around, you two. It's getting late, let's go. With a wry smile, Su Mu pushed the two out of the room. It was almost noon, and Su Mu and the other two came to the concert. Because the concert would not start until the evening, they planned to go to the lounge to find Lin Ruori, but were stopped by the security personnel at the door. As a man, Su Mu showed his mature side and communicated with the security personnel. Su Yang stood beside Su Mu quietly, holding Michelle's hand like a young wife. Michelle was fighting a life and death struggle with a food called marshmallow. The little girl held a huge marshmallow in one hand and almost stuffed her little face into it. The pink marshmallow on her face was unaware and tasted it with relish. Looking back at Michelle, whose hair was covered with cotton candy, Su Mu once again doubted whether she was 18 years old or not. He smiled brightly at the security guard. "We are Miss Lin Ruori's friends, so we can't go in." The security guard shrugged helplessly. "I'm very sorry, in order to ensure the safety of Miss Lin Ruori and other actors, I can't let you in. Of course, if you can prove that you are Lin Ruori's friends, you can go in." Su Mu frowned slightly and turned his head to cast an inquiring look at Su Yang. Su Yang shook her head. There was nothing she could do about the seriousness of the security guard. "Huh? Major General." A cheer suddenly came. Before Su Yang could react, a pair of tender little hands appeared from behind her and climbed up the proud ups and downs of her chest. Su Mu's eyes almost popped out. Sister's chest. A place he dared not even dream of. The hands kneaded her restlessly for a few times. Su Yang seemed to be used to it, but when she saw Su Mu's eyes, her face suddenly turned red. She pulled the girl behind her to her front and hit her head hard with a red face. "Stop fooling around." This girl was naturally Lin Ruori. The girl drooled and smiled foolishly. Su Yang blushed and glanced at Su Mu, who was thinking about something messy. "Muer, this is Ruori." Lin Ruori stared at Su Mu with big eyes, and Su Mu also looked her up and down. Her long pink hair was tied into two naughty ponytails, and her standard celebrity face was innocent, and she looked very energetic. Lin Ruori came forward and smiled politely at Su Mu. "You are the younger brother of the Major General, right?" "Hello." Although it was strange why Lin Ruori emphasized the word brother, Su Mu still nodded very politely. "Hello." In a place where Su Yang and Michelle could not see, Lin Ruori's pretty face turned cold. "You want to occupy the Major General? You better be careful." The naked threat sounded in Su Mu's ears, but Su Yang and Michelle over there seemed not to hear it. Su Mu suddenly realized that the person in front of him was a sound ability user. Ignoring Lin Ruori's threat, Su Mu glanced at her lightly. "Lolo. How dare you set your sights on your elder sister?" He smiled and said, "Hello, I am Su Mu, Su Yang is mine alone." Su Yang, who was chatting and laughing with Michelle, was stunned. What was this naked declaration? She glared at Su Mu with dissatisfaction with a red face, but secretly delighted in her heart. This little bastard finally got it. Noticing that Su Yang was paying attention to this side, Lin Ruori's gloomy expression instantly returned to a pure and lovely love. "Let's go to the lounge first." Chapter 15. Pretending to be a couple. As soon as they entered the lounge, Michelle stealthily pulled Lin Ruori aside, gestured, and glanced at Su Mu and Su Yang with her big eyes from time to time. "What is it, Michelle? I want to discuss something with you." Michelle leaned close to Lin Ruori's ear mysteriously. "You say?" Michelle showed a sinister smile on her face. "Let's form an alliance." Lin Ruori was stunned for a moment, and looked at Michelle in confusion. "Alliance?" The little girl smiled mysteriously. "Su Mu is mine, and the Major General is yours. Do you want to do it?" Lin Ruori's eyes lit up. She gritted her teeth and looked at Su Mu, then looked at Su Yang lovingly. "Deal." Su Yang was beside Su Mu over there. "Muer, don't bother with Ruori. This girl has some issues with her sexual orientation." Su Mu calmly drank a sip of water and looked coldly at the little loli and the big star who were laughing there. "Will I bother with them?" Su Yang looked at Su Mu in silence, with a serious look on his face. She was about to say something when she suddenly found Michelle jumping over to her. She hurriedly leaned over to Su Mu's ear and said shyly, "Muer, why don't you take me tonight?" Puff. Su Mu, who had drunk water angrily to ease his hostility, suddenly spat out a mouthful of water, and poor Michelle was immediately sprayed in the face. "Su Mu, what are you doing?" Michelle screamed. Su Mu coughed for a while. "Sorry, I choked suddenly." Michelle finally understood why there is the saying, "Too much joy leads to sorrow." She snorted helplessly and ran to the bathroom. Su Yang looked at Su Mu with great resentment, then stood up and followed Michelle to the bathroom. No one would feel at ease leaving Michelle alone there. Seeing that Su Yang and Michelle had gone to the bathroom, Lin Ruori's originally sunny face darkened. "Hey, bastard. Let's make a deal." Su Mu smiled slightly. "Tell me, what's the deal?" "Michelle is yours, and the Major General is mine. Do you want to do it?" Su Mu was speechless. Did this guy sell out Michelle right away? The two of them were sneaking around just now. With Michelle's intelligence, Su Mu could easily guess that they had reached some kind of consensus, but it was the first time he saw someone selling out his accomplice so quickly. Seeing that Su Mu didn't say anything, Lin Ruori secretly said that there is hope. The gloomy expression on his face turned into a very friendly smile, and he took Su Mu's hand with a smile. "Brother Mu, what do you think? Do you want to do it? If you make a deal, I can knock Michelle unconscious and put her on your bed tonight." Su Mu rolled his eyes and cursed inwardly. Damn. This is such a thorough sell. An idea flashed through his mind, and Su Mu gently lifted Lin Ruori's chin with his hand, revealing a wicked smile. "I want you tonight. Come if you have the guts." Lin Ruori also showed a wicked smile in cooperation. "If you dare to come, I will castrate you. Let's see if the Major General still wants you." Intentionally or unintentionally, Lin Ruori automatically ignored the fact that she didn't have that thing in the first place. "What are you doing?" Two exclamations were heard. It turned out that Su Yang and Michelle came back together. They saw Su Mu holding Lin Ruori's chin, and the two of them were looking at each other affectionately. They even had the same smile on their lips. Su Mu withdrew his hand as if he had been electrocuted, patted Lin Ruori's head with a dry laugh, and said, "I was just joking with Ruori." Lin Ruori's face turned dark, revealing a sinister smile. Her nose wrinkled, and tears quickly flowed like a rootless spring. She sobbed, "Major General. Brother Mu bullied me. Wow. I didn't know this guy is such a good actor. Do you think my sister will trust you like this?" Su Mu thought proudly. Obviously he overestimated Su Yang. Women are magical creatures. When jealousy strikes, their IQ will become negative. Su Yang came up to him, grabbed Su Mu's ear, and said in a fierce voice, "Mua, you are really good. You have learned how to tease women? Why don't you tease me?" Su Mu rolled his eyes. What was he talking about? He should have some limits when he spoke so quickly. Su Yang cried out in realization, blushed and lowered her head, secretly glancing at Lin Ruori and Michelle, who had strange expressions on their faces. For girls, oh no, 3 girls and 1 boy were playing and fighting. In the blink of an eye, it was already night and the moon rose silently high in the sky. Lin Ruori and Su Mu fought for a while, then went backstage contentedly to prepare for the performance. Su Mu frowned. It was so tiring to be so scheming. Su Yang pinched Su Mu's shoulders with both anger and amusement. This guy had been arguing with Lin Ruori for the whole afternoon. Although the topic of their conversation had never been about her, Su Yang still felt sweet in her heart. This little guy Su Mu finally got it. Michelle took off her gothic Lolita outfit and put on a tights. The black tights outlined Michelle's immature figure like a green apple. It must be said that Michelle in tights still has a different kind of charm. But the two men who were just short of adultery on their faces didn't even look at her. The little girl stomped her feet in anger, the space twisted, and she disappeared in the lounge. Since she was a killer, she must have hidden herself in advance. Su Yang gently straightened Su Mu's collar. Although she and Su Mu finally had some space alone, it was not appropriate to stay here as the mission was approaching. She secretly decided that she would think of a way to send Michelle back this time. "Mua, shall we get ready too?" Be careful later." Su Yang's voice trembled slightly, and she said to herself helplessly, "It turns out that I have been afraid all the time." "Don't worry." Su Mu sensed the worry in her heart and gently squeezed her little hand. "Mua. It's okay, let's go." "Silly girl. How can I take care of you if I can't protect myself?" Su Mu pinched her face gently. With her arms slightly bent and a smile on her lips, Su Yang raised her head and looked at the confident face. She smiled knowingly and reached out to hold Su Mu's slightly bent arm. A man and a woman walked towards the performance site, talking and laughing. Because of the mission, Su Mu and Su Yang pretended to be a couple and hid in the audience. Lin Ruori and Michelle were originally against it, but they underestimated Su Yang's yearning for it. Under the threat of Su Yang's eyes, they wisely gave up the entanglement with this issue. There will be opportunities in the future, right? Save your life first, right? As the saying goes, if you have a green mountain, you will not be afraid of running out of firewood. As the couple Su Mu and Su Yang walked intimately towards the performance venue, countless boys' and girls' hearts were broken. The woman was wearing a black evening gown that set off her skin as white as mutton fat. Her seductive curves were so perfect that they were beyond words. Her delicate facial features were adorned on her small face that could be broken by the wind. Her slender eyebrows were stretched and her red lips formed a desirable curve. Her charming face was adorned with a pure and flawless smile. The man, wearing a simple black suit, with a slightly thin body as straight as a javelin, seemed to have invincible power. Although all the girls were paying attention to his handsome face with the word "suck" written on it. Chapter 16 Pandora Attacks. The two people who attracted countless brilliance ignored the onlookers and walked to the guest seats in front of the stage, still chatting and laughing. "Sister, can you please not hold me so tight?" Su Mu blushed slightly as he moved his arms that were held in Su Yang's arms. "I won't." Su Yang refused with a smile like a little girl. It was so hard to be with Mu'er openly, but this guy was shy. He clenched his hands even more when he thought of this. Su Mu looked at his arms stuck between the ups and downs of Su Yang's chest, and wailed in his heart, "My dear elder sister. You are tempting me to commit a crime." Indeed, the temptation that comes unintentionally is often the deepest temptation. The temptation that is deliberately revealed is not so effective. Isn't this the case? Su Mu, who was almost immune to Su Yang, shamelessly hardened. He changed his sitting position awkwardly. Although he liked Su Yang very much and they were not related by blood, there was still a moral bottom line that the world taboo. Su Yang looked at Su Mu's blushing face with great interest. It was really strange to see this fool blushing. At this moment, the lights in the venue dimmed, the whole scene became quiet in an instant, and a colorful light shone on the stage like sunshine. With a series of loud bangs, huge fireworks bloomed above the stage, so beautiful that it was beyond words. Lin Ruori appeared on the stage in a pink princess dress, with an innocent smile on her beautiful face. "Dear friends. How are you?" She didn't seem to be holding the microphone, but her voice reached everyone's ears, and suddenly cheers like a landslide and tsunami rang out. "Today, Ruori wants to thank everyone here. Thank you for giving me the courage to stand here." Lin Ruori paused. "I believe everyone has heard. Pandora will come to attack this venue today." Exclamations rang out, and countless fans shouted out their concerns about Lin Ruori's safety. Su Mu's mouth twitched in the guest seat. Those crazy fans seemed to be eating Pandora. Is this woman so charming? Black-bellied Lala. If these fans knew she was Lala, they would be heartbroken. Su Yang smiled slightly and answered Su Mu's question. Ruori's voice can reach everyone's heart, affect everyone's emotions, and even relieve stress. That's why everyone likes her. This child is not easy. Like you, I was abandoned by my family as a monster when I was a child. Although people living in the Longyu Kingdom are not as hostile to people with special abilities as those in other countries, they still look at monsters like us with prejudice. Su Yang lowered her head with a little disappointment. Seeing that Su Yang was a little depressed, Su Mu chuckled and said, "Isn't that good?" Su Yang rolled her eyes at him. "What's wrong with that? If we hadn't been abandoned, we wouldn't have met, right?" Su Yang was stunned. This did make sense. Just as she was about to say something, Lin Ruori on the stage bowed deeply to her fans. "Don't worry, everyone. My colleagues are here today, they will resist Pandora, let's cheer for them, okay? Come on." A huge wave of voice swept the entire space. Su Mu actually felt a sense of pride in his heart, as if his body was filled with strength. He couldn't help but think that this girl's voice really had a special power. Then let's get started now. First I want to present an ancient song to my dear elder sister. As Lin Ruori's voice fell, colorful lights gathered on Su Yang, and suddenly she seemed to become the brightest presence in the entire scene. The singing started. "You are leaving, your little shoulders are carrying dreams and hopes. I want to send you off as you are about to set off. At least it's okay to say it seriously today. All the smiles are in the flower fields. Into a message for you. Thank you for laughing with me. Thank you for crying with me. Don't worry. Don't worry. Only the road we believe in will keep moving forward. Goodbye, because the journey has just begun now. Goodbye, I will always stand by your side." Don't worry. You are not alone. You can come back here anytime. As the song ended, a huge spaceship appeared in the distant sky. Lin Ruori glanced at the spaceship calmly and said, "Go. My friend." Su Yang reluctantly let go of Su Mu's arm. "Mua, you stay here to protect Ruori, Michelle and I will go to fight Pandora. Let me go with you." Su Mu grabbed Su Yang, who was turning around to leave. "You stay. This is an order." Su Yang's pretty face turned cold. The vigorous and resolute commander came back and coldly pulled out the hand that Su Mu had grabbed. Su Yang's face softened. "Your ability can only be used for 3 minutes. You must stay here as a trump card. And your ability is useless against that kind of thing, right?" Su Mu looked at the rapidly approaching spaceship and sighed, "Be careful. Don't worry." Su Yang smiled faintly, her little face flashing with excitement. "Mua, let me show you your sister's true power." Golden arcs of electricity instantly covered Su Yang's entire body. Her stunning face no longer had the same smile as always, but instead showed a deep coldness. A different kind of charm unfolded on her petite body. Su Yang stomped her feet and turned into a golden light, shooting straight towards the spaceship. A golden arc of electricity flashed in the night sky and instantly hit the spaceship in the distant sky. Su Mu's heart rose up. He saw the spaceship shook, a violent explosion occurred, and it slowly fell down. The space twisted and Michelle's figure flashed, and she could vaguely be seen holding a dagger in her hand. A dozen young boys and girls appeared outside the venue, guarding all the entrances to the venue. Each of them had a green sign on their shoulder with 3 big blood-red characters on it, Discipline Department. Su Mu watched the spaceship fall, his mouth twitching slightly. Is this still a human? Just one impact sank a giant spaceship. From time to time, people with special abilities would appear and fly towards the venue at a rapid speed. Every time Michelle's figure flashed, a person with special abilities would fall to the ground, twitching from time to time. The corner of Su Mu's mouth twitched again. This little girl Michelle was so fierce. A huge ball of lightning fell from the sky, and a large number of people with special abilities and innocent buildings fell down like wheat being cut. Su Mu finally understood what a humanoid nuclear warhead was. There were still many people with special abilities approaching the venue, but they were all blocked by the students from the discipline department who came to support them. Su Mu frowned and looked back at Lin Ruori on the stage, muttering, "Is this girl so valuable?" "That's right, Su Yang is fine. The people she knocked down were basically electrocuted like charcoal, and it's no problem to save them with current technology. But Michelle's place was a naked massacre. Every time the space was distorted, a bloody light appeared." Chapter 17. Handsome Guy, Who Are You? Lin Ruori on the stage was still singing, and the fans below the stage were also shouting wildly, ignoring the explosions from the battles between those with special abilities. A middle-aged man in a black suit suddenly appeared behind Lin Ruori, causing fans to exclaim. Just as Lin Ruori's singing voice arrived, a visible high-pitched sound wave directly hit the middle-aged man. Su Mu, who had just taken off his suit jacket and was about to go up to perform, was stunned to see the middle-aged man fall down with blood coming out of his 7 orifices. Is he so perverted? Su Mu even suspected that he was not here to find confidence but to find inferiority. Look, Su Yang was emitting electric light and everything she touched exploded. Michelle was covered in blood and flashed from time to time like a blood angel. Lin Ruori was singing a passionate song, and every lyric would bring a faintly visible wave of sound flying on the stage. Suddenly, a cage made purely of ice fell from the sky and covered Lin Ruori, and her singing stopped. A man in a black windbreaker appeared on the stage. He took a look at the chaotic venue and the fight in the distance and snorted coldly, "Humph, what a hassle." Lin Ruori was imprisoned in an ice cage. Her voice could not be heard outside. She was very anxious. This was a big deal. Was she really being trafficked? Just when Lin Ruori was about to fight, the ice cage disintegrated silently, and a silver-haired man stood in front of her with an indifferent expression. Su Mu turned back indifferently and glanced at Lin Ruori, who had tears in her eyes, and said, "Go on, I'm here." Lin Ruori blinked in confusion. "Handsome guy, who are you?" Su Mu, who was about to have a fierce fight with the mysterious windbreaker man, stumbled. "Sing your song? It will be troublesome if the venue is in chaos." Lin Ruori looked around the venue. Because she was imprisoned just now, the venue was a bit chaotic. She shouted without hesitation, "Dear fans, let's continue. Please don't panic. Leave everything to my colleagues and the discipline department. When Lin Ruori's singing sounded again, Su Mu also collided with the man in the windbreaker. The man in the windbreaker waved his hand lightly, and countless ice cones shot towards Su Mu, while Su Mu also waved his hand lightly and all the ice cones disappeared. Oh! It's a very interesting ability. The man in the windbreaker looked at Su Mu coldly. Su Mu glanced at the man in the windbreaker indifferently, stomped his feet heavily, and flew towards him. He didn't have time to talk nonsense with the man in the windbreaker. So as Lin Ruori sang passionately, the fans cheered wildly, not knowing whether it was for Lin Ruori or the battle on the stage. With a sneer, Su Mu smashed the windbreaker man's ice sword with a punch. He turned around and kicked the windbreaker man's leg. The windbreaker man also sneered and an ice shield condensed on his leg. Then the sneer turned into astonishment. When Su Mu's kick hit his ice shield, there was no hindrance at all. The ice shield almost disintegrated instantly. The man in the windbreaker was beaten hard, which was very strange. The leg that was beaten did not feel the expected pain at all. With a sneer, the man in the windbreaker was about to stand up, but Su Mu was no longer looking at him, but at the dark night sky. I was actually looked down upon. The man in the windbreaker was furious. He was a level 5 superpower. How could he be looked down upon like this? Just as he was about to stand up, he was horrified to find that one of his legs was gone. No wound. No blood. No pain. It was as if it had never existed. And the clothes on his body had already disappeared. The audience cheered. Was this a magic trick? A person's legs suddenly disappeared. His clothes also disappeared. Lin Ruori looked back suspiciously, and a one-legged naked man came into her sight. The originally passionate singing suddenly stopped, and a high-pitched and exaggerated scream rushed into the sky. A smile appeared on Su Mu's lips. The tactic was successful. Lin Ruori's scream slid across the sky, and the sky twisted, and a spaceship appeared in the sky. It was space camouflage. This was Pandora's real spaceship. The space twisted and Michelle appeared on the stage. The little girl exuded a murderous aura that was as tangible as a substance. Su Mu glanced at her with a strange expression. Her black tights were almost stained dark red by blood. How many people had she killed? Although killing people was not strange in this chaotic world, but thinking about the past month of getting along with her, it was hard for Su Mu to imagine this silly and cute little girl who cried when she was bullied as a killer who killed people without hesitation. Golden lightning flashed, and Su Yang also came to the stage, looking coldly at the spaceship in the sky without making any rash moves. The spaceship was the real main force of Pandora. The previous ones were just some minor characters. Several young people in the spaceship also looked at the people on the stage. A blond middle-aged man waved his hand and said, "Retreat. If we continue, the losses will be too great." The spaceship slowly rose into the sky, and the other members of Pandora retreated like the tide. The spotlight shone on the stage, focusing on Su Mu and the other two. Su Mu sneered and slowly walked off the stage. Lin Ruori, who was almost blinded by the one-legged naked man, was stunned and wanted to chase after him. Shouldn't she express her gratitude to the person who saved her? Su Yang grabbed her and asked, "What are you doing?" Lin Ruori was stunned. "That handsome guy saved me. I'm going to ask him his name. Didn't you see the logo on his collar? There will be plenty of opportunities in the future. Continue your concert." Su Yang rolled her eyes. If Lin Ruori and Muir came into contact, the fans would probably cheer, right? After all, the idol was standing on the stage naked. As Su Yang spoke, Lin Ruori discovered the bloody rose badge on Su Mu's collar. She exclaimed, "How is this possible? That's Su Mu." Michelle regained her innocent look and ran over, giving Lin Ruori a big hug, covering her with blood. Lin Ruori looked at her princess dress with a frown on her face, glared at Michelle fiercely, and suppressed the urge to lose her temper, revealing a pure smile. "Dear fans, let us thank my 3 colleagues. And all the students in the discipline department. Let the concert continue." In the backstage lounge, Su Mu sat there with a twitching mouth. In the washroom at the back, Su Yang was helping Michelle take a bath. After all, a little girl with blood on her face and a beautiful woman with a grey face were not very pleasing to the eyes. Before he could savor the brief battle, he heard the laughter and water sounds of the 2 women in the washroom, and Su Mu got hard again. The image of the 2 women being naked appeared in his mind. Su Mu frowned slightly, thinking that the woman beside him was too strong. This almost one-sided battle seemed to have no suspense. Soon, the laughter and the sound of water interrupted Su Mu's thoughts again. Chen Zui said, "Hey, let's keep the battle short. I have a day of training today. I have to go out to dinner with my girlfriend tonight." Chapter 18. There aren't enough jobs in my house. We're finally home. What a great smell. Michelle cheered and jumped 3 meters away, falling directly on the sofa, hugging the pillow and smelling it. Suyan walked in with a wry smile. "Michelle, stop messing around. Take off your shoes, you're going to dirty the sofa again." Michelle let out an "oh" and kicked her legs, and the princess boots on her little feet flew out, one of them intentionally or unintentionally hitting Su Mu, who was just about to enter the door. Without even looking at the flying princess boots, Su Mu waved his hand and the boots flew directly out of the window. Su Mu stretched his body lazily, the taste of home. Su Mu turned his head and looked at the man behind him with an angry look. "Why did you follow me? Who else could that person outside the door be if not the famous star Lin Ruori?" Lin Ruori pushed Su Mu, who was blocking the door, away, strode in with a lot of bags, and said arrogantly, "What's wrong with me coming to live here? I'm living here to give you face. How many people want me to live in their house?" Su Mu rolled his eyes. "I don't have enough bowls at home. Don't think that I won't hit you just because you're handsome." The big star jumped up and was about to hit Su Mu hard. Su Mu stretched out his hands lightly and lifted Lin Ruori into the air. After training for a month to fight various beasts, he was still defeated by this girl. "Isn't it too embarrassing? Asshole. Put me down." Lin Ruori struggled, but still said honestly, "The Major General is mine. I'm worried about her living with you." Su Mu looked at the big star, who was still waving his arms and legs while being held in the air with a headache. "Is this really the national idol Lin Ruori? The famous good girl? Damn it, I'm not going to show you some color. Do you really think I'm a sick cat? I'll show you my power." He made up his mind, gritted his teeth, bent one leg, and placed Lin Ruori's small body across his legs. "Bastard! What are you doing?" Lin Ruori exclaimed and struggled violently. Lin Ruori was stunned. What did this bastard do? The numbing feeling on her butt was so ironic. Su Yang and Michelle were stunned and decisively plugged their ears with their fingers. Su Mu heard a loud scream and felt dizzy. Then he saw the TV screen in the house shattered, the windows shattered, the fish tank exploded, and the door of the house was blown away. He gritted his teeth and said, "I'll let you scream." There was another bang, and the screaming stopped abruptly. "Are you still screaming?" Su Mu glared at Lin Ruori ferociously. Lin Ruori's lips pursed and tears welled up in her big eyes. Seeing that she didn't say anything, Su Mu raised his hand and was about to hit her even harder. "Muer!" Su Yang called softly, and Su Mu's hand stopped in mid-air. "Forget it, Muer." Su Yang looked at Lin Ruori with tears in her eyes with heartache. He rolled his eyes helplessly and put down Lin Ruori. As soon as she landed, the big star burst into tears. Su Yang came over and gently hugged her in her arms, patting her head. "Okay, don't cry, it's Mua's fault. Major General." This guy buried his head in Su Yang's proud ups and downs and started crying. Su Mu blinked in confusion. Why did he hear a giggle amidst the crying? He rolled his eyes, scratched his head into a mess, and said to Michelle, who was giggling on the sofa, "Michelle, come and help clean up the house." The little girl rolled her eyes without any instruction and pouted, "Why are you calling me? It was obviously Ruori who did it." Su Mu glared at Michelle fiercely, "Are you coming or not?" Michelle shuddered, thinking of what happened to Lin Ruori just now. "Come on. Why are you so fierce? Don't think I'm afraid of you." She said this with courage, but the moisture in her eyes betrayed her. Su Mu slapped his forehead. "Oh my god. How am I going to live from now on?" Su Yang, who was comforting Lin Ruori, also smiled bitterly. Lin Ruori also moved in. "I'm afraid the space for her and Muir will be even smaller." The two of them smiled bitterly at each other and shrugged at the same time. With a sigh, he pulled up the badge on his collar, Liberation. Su Mu, who was in a liberated state, cleaned up the glass debris with a depressed look on his face, while Michelle teleported the fragments away one by one. He raised his head and wiped the sweat from his forehead, and found that Lin Ruori, who was nestled in Su Yang's arms, was secretly looking at him, with a look of anger on her adorable, tearful little face. When Lin Ruori noticed Su Mu looking at her, she shuddered violently. The cold look in his eyes frightened her so much that she buried her head in Su Yang's arms again. Su Yang glared at him angrily, and Su Mu smiled helplessly. This was none of his business. The disadvantage of being liberated was that no matter how cold his attitude was, his eyes were indifferent, and he couldn't change it. He couldn't even smile. Oh, it's finally over. Michelle swung her arms and slammed into the sofa again. Su Mu had recovered from his injuries long ago, and was sitting weakly on the sofa waiting to recover his strength. Lin Ruoi sat beside him with her head down. I'm sorry. A voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz sounded in my ears. Su Mu looked at Lin Ruoi, who was secretly looking at him in confusion. She wrinkled her nose, and tears began to fill her big eyes again. Lin Ruoi sobbed, I'm sorry. Su Mu frowned, oh. Another crybaby. Michelle was not satisfied with this. She jumped up from the sofa and put one hand on her waist. Su Mu, what do you mean? Are you insinuating me? He glared at her arrogantly, watched with satisfaction as the little girl pouted and shrank back, and gave her a look that said, you'd better know your place. He smiled at Lin Ruoi and patted her little head. Okay, stop crying. I was wrong too. Then, can you give the position of Major General to me? Lin Ruoi looked at Su Mu weakly. Dream. He casually drove Lin Ruoi to Michelle's sofa and pinched his slightly painful brows again. He had been doing this more and more frequently recently. He was so carefree before. Now, two little devils came at once. At this time, a pair of small hands were placed on his shoulders, gently pinching him. When he raised his head, Su Yang's beautiful face came into view. Sister is still the best. Su Mu suddenly missed the days when Su Yang was alone every day. He had not been treated this way since Michelle came, and now there is another one. Su Mu looked at the two girls who were huddled together furtively on another sofa, and concluded that this life was unbearable. Su Yang looked at the two little girls with both anger and amusement. She knew them too well. After all, she had watched them grow up. Chapter 19, God is with you, my child. On this day, he was in a very good mood. You want to know why? He recently accepted a new younger brother. The two were walking in the park. Brother, you are really awesome. You can pick up girls easily. A pockmarked little fat boy flattered He is Wang Xiaoqian, He's new younger brother, a guy who wants to fall in love so much that he goes crazy. However, he is a typical short, ugly and poor guy. He fantasizes about striking down a goddess all day long, so he resolutely acknowledges He as his big brother and asks for advice on the secret of picking up girls. That's right, what's that about picking up girls? Didn't you see that Yi Shuwen was completely obedient to me? He raised his head proudly, posing in a posture that he thought was cool. Yeah, big brother, you are really awesome. You are worthy of being called a virgin killer. You even managed to seduce one of the 3 most beautiful women in the academy. You must have slept with her, right? Wang Xiaoqian had an obscene smile on his face. He was stunned. This matter really hadn't been done. Yi Shuwen had never agreed. Logically speaking, they had been together for so long, and even if they had been forced to do it, it would have been done long ago. But, you have to know that Yi Shuwen is a level for superpower. Forced. Although this woman is timid, if she accidentally hits me, wouldn't I be dead? At least half of my body would be paralyzed. In order not to lose face in front of his younger brother, he boasted with a dry laugh, that's for sure. So far, no woman has escaped from my grasp, don't worry. Follow me for a few days, and I'll teach you a few tricks. Wang Xiaoqian, who should have been extremely excited to hear this, surprisingly did not respond and just stared blankly behind him. Hey, what's wrong? Is there a beautiful girl? He frowned and posed, pretending to be serious without looking back. Wang Xiaoqian wiped his mouth vigorously. Yes, 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 a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful girl. 3, an extremely quality. He looked at Wang Xiaoqian with disdain and said, look at you. You stutter when you see a beautiful woman. What did I teach you? He turned around with a smile on his face. Although Wang Xiaoqian was short, ugly and poor, he had high standards. He said it was top-notch. It must be top-notch. A new prey appeared. As for Yi Shuwen, she was not here anyway, right? When I turned around, a jumping little blonde girl came into view. Her tender face was rosy, making people want to take a bite. After that, a stunning beauty appeared with a peaceful smile on her face. She had an angelic face and a devilish figure. She exuded the aura of a goddess, and her every frown and smile was full of crazy charm. Next to the goddess is a pink-haired girl holding a lollipop in her mouth. Although her face is not as beautiful as that of the goddess, she is also the best of the best, and she still has a lot of room for growth. Her little face is filled with a cheerful smile, making her very energetic. A standard energetic girl. And the more you look at her, the more she looks like the popular super idol Lin Ruori. Behind him, a handsome man with a gloomy face and a look of disgust appeared. If this man is not Su Mu, then who else could he be? His eyes almost popped out of his head and he exclaimed, "Oh my god! Could that girl be Yi Ruori?" Lin Ruori, who was chatting and laughing with Su Yang, was startled when she heard someone calling her. She stopped and asked in confusion, "Are you calling me?" He almost vomited blood. He jumped up, landed on his knees, and slid in front of Su Mu in a kneeling position. "He? What are you doing?" Su Mu looked at He strangely with a crazy face and instinctively took a few steps back. "Brother. Boss. Uncle. Daddy." He excitedly grabbed Su Mu's hand. "Teach me how to pick up girls. First I conquered my elder sister, then I slept with the best lodi. Now what the hell? I even picked up Yi Ruori. You are simply a legend in the world of picking up girls. I admire you so much." Su Mu gently pulled his hand out, patted He's shoulder, and made the sign of a cross in front of him. "Child, I pray for you. God be with you." He was stunned. Is he rejecting me? Before he could think any more, 3 fierce murderous auras descended upon him. "Su Yang, Mu'er is mine alone. How dare you say he's a pick-up girl? Unforgivable. Michelle, when was I pushed down by Su Mu? Well, although I have fantasized about pushing him down, but this is about innocence. It is unforgivable. Lin Ruori, I am loyal to the Major General. How dare this guy say that I am Su Mu's woman? Unforgivable." Then, under Wen Xiaoqiang's horrified gaze, the 3 beauties roared and began to beat He wildly. A pair of black wings of carbon molecules appeared behind He. The superstar Lin Ruori opened her mouth and whispered a scolding. The carbon molecules were decomposed before they took shape. Su Yang waved her hand and a small golden arc of electricity visited an important part of He as a man. Michelle punched He in the eye socket and blasted back the scream. God knows how much strength is in that little body. 15 minutes later, 3 beauties were playing on the grass with something called a kite, a relic from ancient times. He sat next to Su Mu holding a pig head with 2 panda eyes. Wen Xiaoqiang had already been scared away by the brutality of the goddesses. "I'll tell you a secret, the 3 of them have had their periods these days." Su Mu whispered mysteriously into He's ear. He's eyes widened. "Fuck. You know all this." "I just said it casually." Su Mu rolled his eyes at him speechlessly. "Oh my god, it hurts so much. That little loli is so cruel. Every move hits me in the face." He groaned miserably and looked at the 3 girls playing there with hatred. Patting He's shoulder heavily, Su Mu said with a wicked smile, "Go ahead, beat her up. I support you." He smiled bitterly. Not to mention that he really couldn't bear to hit such a beautiful girl. Even if he couldn't beat her. 60% of the injuries on his body were left by that little girl. Recalling the scene just now, he felt so fucking aggrieved. The little loli attacked him everywhere, and her little fist slammed into him with the power to split gold and stone. Su Yang only stretched out a slender jade finger, and every time she touched it, a small arc of electricity would visit a sensitive part of his body. Although the fancy moves of the big star Lin Ruori didn't hurt, this girl was the most hateful. Her seductive red lips slightly opened, and a visible sound wave enveloped the corner where the few people were, preventing He's screams from spreading, and cutting off the hope of passers by coming to help. Su Mu looked at He, whose eyes were distracted, with great sympathy and sighed, "Now you know my distress, right?" He nodded heavily, "Having these women. It's really a headache. But it's also very happy." As he said this, an expression of pain and happiness appeared on his face. As the saying goes, beating is love and scolding is love, right? Su Mu frowned. It turned out that this guy was M. Chapter 20, 3-0. Chinibia? Beautiful girl? Have you finally awakened? He looked at the three girls playing in a daze. A pair of hot pants plus 2 short skirts equals 6 white thighs. Look. Su Yang's round and sexy legs with a golden ratio. Look. The spring scenery under the skirt of the big star is looming. Young and sexy. Look. The 2 matchstick-like thighs under the skirt of the blonde little Lolita, oh, they are still quite white. Su Mu frowned and vaguely saw a puff of green smoke rising from He's head, similar to the green smoke caused by a burning computer central processing unit. Su Mu, can I move to your house? He's eyes were full of stars. No way. Su Mu refused without hesitation. If he let this guy live in his house, he would probably have to sleep on the street the next day. You know, Lin Ruori's scream almost shattered all the glassware in the house. Damn it. How can you be so disloyal? He glared at Su Mu angrily and continued, you can't eat all 3 beauties, right? How about I pick one and the remaining 2 are yours? Su Mu rolled his eyes. This guy is really confident. He even picked one. Who? Su Yang? I'm the first one to disagree. Michelle? Should we prepare a grave for him first? Lin Ruori? Let's not talk about whether the crazy fans will tear him to pieces. Just look at Lin Ruori's orientation. It's not easy to deal with him. Welcome to the ear doctor. Hey. What's that expression on your face? He looked at the speechless Su Mu with dissatisfaction, punched him and said, are you brothers? If you are, give me one. Is there anything I can give into? Su Mu smiled bitterly. Apart from Su Yang, I have no objection to you taking those 2 crazy girls home. I'm just afraid that I will have to collect your bodies the next day. At this time, Michelle came over, looked at He who was smiling, snorted, and with a smile on her face, she grabbed Su Mu's shoulders, shook them vigorously, and said tenderly, Brother Mu Tilda. The sweet voice made Su Mu tremble. He looked up at her strangely and said, let go. I'm thirsty. Then. Go buy some drinks. Michelle said with a smile. No. Su Mu rolled his eyes at her unhappily. The little girl rolled her eyes, narrowed them into crescents, and said with a smile, Major General is thirsty too. He frowned slightly and found that Su Yang was also looking over here. A crystal bead of sweat shone on the tip of her nose in the sunlight. Okay. Brother Mu is the best. Michelle cheered and bit Su Mu's face. He, who was standing beside her, had a green light in his eyes. He smiled bitterly and touched his face, then turned around and found He looking at him with admiration. Are you going or not? He glanced hesitantly at the 3 girls who were still playing, and said, I'm not going. You go. He's idea was that the beauties might have some requests later, wouldn't he have the same treatment? In the fantasy world, the big star called out, Brother Yi, and threw herself into He's arms. With a twitching mouth, Su Mu glanced at He, who looked like a fangirl with an infatuated look on his face. He stood up with a sigh and stretched his body. Hey, I'll go then. What a trouble. When Su Mu staggered to the place where the vending machine was located, a girl was using the vending machine there. The girl was about the same height as Lin Ruori. From the side, her face was very pretty and her figure was perfect, with big places being big and small being small. She was a standard beauty, with a heartbreakingly pale face, as expressionless as an iceberg. Su Mu almost slapped himself. How come I like to criticize girls like He? This is a bad habit. But it does have a different kind of beauty. An alluring red cloud appeared on the pale face of the girl over there, and she stuffed a $100 bill into the vending machine to choose a juice. With a clang, a bottle of juice fell down. The display of the vending machine flashed with colorful lights and then returned to calm. There was no change. Su Mu looked at the girl's back with great sympathy. Poor girl. It would be strange if she didn't get swallowed up for taking such a large denomination of money. There was still no expression on the girl's face. The alluring red clouds had faded away, leaving only the heartbreaking paleness. Then she whipped the vending machine in a very unladylike manner. With a clang, drinks kept falling out of the vending machine. The girl picked up a bunch of drinks and held them in her arms as if no one was around. When she turned around and saw Su Mu with a strange look on his face, she was stunned and the drinks in her arms fell to the ground. Su Mu also stared at the girl in a daze. The girl's eyes were strangely one gold and one red. The two looked at each other silently, and suddenly the girl's pale face turned red, so beautiful. Su Mu twisted his leg and almost fell down. He smiled bitterly and shook his head. I'd better change to a vending machine. Thinking of this, Su Mu turned around and prepared to leave. A pale little hand grabbed the corner of his clothes, and a voice like a silver bell came out without any emotion. My half-body, where are you going? Su Mu was startled, and turned around to see that it was the girl who was holding her. The meaningless words seemed to come from this girl as well. She looked at the girl's hand holding her clothes in confusion. Hey? What did you say? The girl's pale face showed a hint of a smile, but she immediately returned to her expressionless face. My half. I have been waiting for you for 200 years. Are you going to leave me like this? Su Mu's head ached. Was she crazy? Oh no, it seemed to be a chinibya. Such a beautiful girl actually had a chinibya. Well, I don't understand what you are saying. I'm leaving, please let me go. Su Mu said as gently as possible. Water splashed in the girl's eyes almost instantly. Although her face was still expressionless, crystal tears had already slid down her cheeks. My half-body. Before you leave, take away my chastity that I have kept for you for 200 years. I love you. Resisting the urge to vomit blood, Su Mu admitted that this chastity that had been kept for 200 years was indeed very tempting to destroy. Not to mention that this girl looked less than 20 years old. He was not a beast like he who thought with his lower body. Besides, who would give up their chastity to a man they didn't even know her name after just a few words? Su Mu laughed dryly. Miss, did you misunderstand something? Tears kept falling down the girl's already heartbreakingly pale face, forming a pitiful picture. My half-body, don't you want me anymore? She touched her forehead weakly, secretly lamenting how she could have encountered such a thing. Su Mu took out a tissue from his arms and wiped away the girl's tears. Don't cry, I'm going to buy some drinks now. If you want to come with me. The girl hummed, and a beautiful smile appeared on her expressionless face. Although it was only a fleeting smile, it was indeed very beautiful. Chapter 21, Sneak Attack. Kiss. When Su Mu came back with a drink in his arms, looking gloomy, his eyes almost popped out. Oh my god. Can I pick up girls just by buying a drink? The 3-0, middle school girl with a second-year syndrome was expressionlessly holding Su Mu's clothes with one hand and holding a bottle of drink with the other. My idol. He shouted and ran up to meet him happily. Because of his loud shouting, the drink in the girl's hand fell to the ground. A trace of anger flashed across her already expressionless face, and she stretched out a tender little white hand towards Hee-Yao. As Hee was running, he felt a speeding kinetic car hit him head-on in the face and bounced back violently. Su Mu looked at Hee in astonishment as he flew away, then turned to look at the expressionless girl. Are you a person with special abilities? The girl looked at him calmly and nodded slightly. The commotion here naturally attracted the attention of the 3 women, and naturally no one would care about Hee who was lying there. Tranquility! Michelle exclaimed. Lin Ruoyi's eyes also lit up. This sister who had been on missions abroad for many years came back. Su Yang walked up quickly. She had a bad feeling. Ning Jing, who had never shown any affection to any man, was actually pulling at the corner of Mua's clothes. Ningjing, why are you here? Su Yang tried her best to control her expression, wailing in her heart, no. Please don't. Ning Jing saw a smile on Su Yang's expressionless face. Major General, you are here as expected. Oh, do you know each other? Su Mu looked at the women puzzledly. Mua, how did you meet her? She is Ning Jing. Didn't Sister Elian mention her? Su Yang complained, her beautiful big eyes staring straight at Ning Jing's little hand holding the corner of Su Mu's clothes. It's hard to put it into words. Su Mu sighed and gave Su Yang a look. How could Su Yang not understand? She turned around and shouted to Michelle, Michelle, take Ning Jing to play kite with us. Michelle had already come over with Lin Ruoyi, smiling widely, and they took Ning Jing away. Ning Jing grabbed the corner of Su Mu's clothes tightly, showing a pitiful expression, as if seeking Su Mu's consent. With a twitch of his mouth, Su Mu said softly, go. A smile bloomed on the pale face, and he followed Michelle and Lin Ruoyi. Ningjing, when did you come back? Today. Ningjing, come and see this. Lin Ruoyi stuffed the kite into Ningjing's hands like she was presenting a treasure. Yeah. Ningjing held the kite expressionlessly. Su Yang retracted her gaze and looked at Su Mu. Now you should tell me what happened. With a slight shrug, Su Mu smiled wryly and recounted his encounter with Ning Jing. Holding her aching head gently, Su Yang smiled bitterly and explained to Su Mu, this girl is good in everything, well-behaved and obedient. The only shortcoming is that she always thinks she is a vampire who has lived for 200 years. After Su Yang's explanation, Su Mu could finally understand the chastity that had been guarded for 200 years, but what should he do? Su Yang also smiled bitterly. This is great. Even Ning Jing has gotten involved. From what she knows about Ning Jing, it seems that Ning Jing must be attached to Mu and will definitely go home with him. It's all your fault. Su Yang glared at the innocent Su Mu angrily. When a woman is angry, as a man it is best not to argue with her. If you think you can win over an unreasonable woman, you can try it. Therefore, Su Mu, who knew this truth very well, shrugged his shoulders and said, "He's handsome, there's nothing I can do about it." "TSK, you're still handsome." Su Yang gave the conceited Su Mu a displeased look. "Even though I'm not handsome, why do you like me so much?" Su Mu smiled proudly. Su Yang, who had never thought that Su Mu would be so direct, was stunned. 2 red clouds floated on her pretty face. She stretched out her little hand in anger and pinched his waist hard. A loud scream echoed in the sky. "Major General, don't bully my half-body!" Ning Jing exclaimed, and the ground suddenly exploded with a stomp of her foot, and Ning Jing was shot towards the 2 people because of the impact force of the explosion. Poor Michelle and Lin Ruori never thought that this would happen. Michelle screamed and disappeared on the spot while holding Lin Ruori, who had no ability to protect herself. Countless bullet-like fragments passed by the place where the 2 had been. He, who had just recovered his breath and stood up dizzy, groaned miserably as a stone as big as his head hit his handsome face head-on. The only words that flashed through his mind were, "These women are so scary." Before poor He fainted, Su Mu, the only person who cared about his life or death, was hugged by Ning Jing and knocked away. Ning Jing lay on Su Mu, raised her little face, and said with a sad face, "Major General, don't hurt him. If you want to hit him, hit me." Su Yang looked at Ning Jing with both anger and amusement. She really had a way to deal with this girl, who made her think a little weird. She smiled bitterly and said, "Hurry up and get up. I won't do anything to Muir. But if you don't get up, Muir will be suffocated to death by you." Ning Jing blinked her big eyes twice and regained her cold expression. She turned her head and found that her chest was pressing against Su Mu's face. She screamed, jumped up, covered her chest and ran away. Su Mu's face turned blue as he gasped for air. He didn't know if it was because he was suffocated or to calm himself down. He smiled bitterly and sat up. "Sister, what should we do now?" Su Yang was also depressed, so she didn't mention it. She and Muir were originally in a good world of 2, but now 3 bloody roses came at once. Fortunately, the other one should not come. Sighing, Su Yang hugged her knees and sat next to Su Mu, looking at the 3 chirping girls over there who kept looking over here. Muir. Su Mu handed Su Yang a bottle of drink and opened one for himself. "Or, let's get married." Puff. "HMPH, if you don't want to, forget it." Su Yang snorted, turned her head to the side with a sweet smile on her lips. I don't, that's not what I meant." Su Mu stuttered. Su Yang was laughing secretly where Su Mu couldn't see. What a fool. Seeing that Su Yang didn't react, Su Mu thought she was really angry. He gritted his teeth and kissed Su Yang on the cheek. Su Yang screamed, and her face instantly turned red enough to seem like blood was about to drip out. She lowered her head and said nothing, wondering why this little bastard suddenly became so bold. The 3 girls over there naturally noticed this side. "Asshole! How dare you sneak attack the Major General?" Lin Ruori screamed and rushed over with fangs and claws bared. Major General, you are so cunning. Brother Mu, I want him too." Michelle ran over as if she was afraid that the world would not be in chaos. Ning Jing's face was still cold. "My half, you are actually unfaithful to me. Kiss me and I will forgive you." Su Yang blushed and glared at the 3 little bastards who were causing trouble, with a tiny flash of lightning in her eyes. Michelle and Lin Ruori slammed on the brakes instantly, laughed dryly and ran back to play with the kite. A good woman should be able to bend and stretch, right? Ning Jing stood there, hesitantly looking at Su Yang with lightning in her eyes. She had a struggling expression on her face and wanted to go over but didn't dare. At this time he just woke up, groaned and tried to get up. Ning Jing's eyes lit up, and she whispered, "I need to calm down." She lifted her sleeves to reveal her snow-white arms, and walked towards He expressionlessly. The two girls who had just picked up the kites also had their eyes lit up, and threw the kites away like garbage, and walked towards He, who had not yet come to his senses. A nearly miserable groan sounded amid the laughter of Lin Ruori and Michelle. Chapter 22 Air Raid. He, do you want me to send you to the hospital? Su Mu squatted beside He, who was lying flat on his back and seemed to be breathing more in than out. He opened his swollen eyes and asked intermittently, "Brother, why are there so many fierce girls around you?" Shrugging helplessly, Su Mu showed a sly smile. "Tough girls are good. They can protect me." He took a deep breath and twitched. It made sense when he thought about it. Look. Which of these girls is not a superpower? Which one is not a national treasure? How the hell did Su Mu get into trouble? I didn't see him do anything special. He must have a secret skill. When he thought of this, he was shocked. Su Mu, you must have some secret, right? Su Mu looked back at the four girls who were sitting together and chatting with a sad face. Secret? What secret? Su Yang had been playing house with him since they were young. To put it bluntly, they were a couple in love. Michelle was just a little girl who had dreamed of being a princess too much. She thought he was her Prince Charming after he was liberated. In addition, Su Mu saw everything, so she just depended on him. As for Lin Ruori, she came to snatch Su Yang from Su Mu. Ning Jing. It's better not to say anything. Who knows what this 2-year-old girl with a second-year syndrome is thinking. With a naughty smile on his face, Su Mu leaned close to He's ear and whispered, "If you can stand up, I will tell you my secret technique for picking up girls." He's eyes, which were swollen and almost unable to open, suddenly widened. He spoke without breathing heavily. "Really?" Without waiting for Su Mu to answer, he stood up and excitedly grabbed Su Mu's hand. "What secret skills do you have? Tell me now." She rolled her eyes and whispered mysteriously into He's ear, "Actually, my secret skill is being pretty." "What kind of secret technique is this?" He rolled his eyes and looked straight at Su Mu. "Brother. Please help me call an ambulance." He rolled his eyes and lay straight down. After sending the unconscious He to the hospital, the girls turned around and left irresponsibly. Su Mu still paid for the medical expenses with a wry smile. In the past, Su Mu would not have the money to pay for He's hospitalization. But now it's different. Su Yang handed over all the family finances to him. And the other girls also stuffed a large sum of money into Su Mu, calling it alimony. What made Su Mu speechless was that the girls, including Ning Jing who was about to move in, didn't know how to cook. This made Su Mu feel like a nanny. Not to mention the existence of Michelle, who was like a glutton. The few of them went home and blinded the titanium alloy eyes of many passers-by. The most dazzling one was naturally the big star Lin Ruori, who signed countless autographs along their way. As the only man, Su Mu naturally endured many envious and jealous eyes, and even more cannibalistic eyes. As soon as she entered the house, Michelle jumped more than 3 meters and hit the sofa as per international practice. Su Yang decided to take a shower first because she was sweating. Lin Ruori's eyes lit up and she insisted on taking a shower with Su Yang. Su Yang couldn't persuade her and had to go into the bathroom with her. Before going into the bathroom, Lin Ruori glanced at Su Mu proudly. Su Mu gritted his teeth and was ready to fight, to take a bath with Su Yang regardless of everything. A pale little hand grabbed the corner of his clothes. Turning his head, he saw Ning Jing's cold and pretty face. Su Mu asked angrily, "What?" Ning Jing stared at Su Mu calmly. She blushed as she thought of something, then returned to her original expressionless look. "I'm hungry." Su Mu rolled his eyes helplessly and walked towards the kitchen resignedly. Although he had known her for less than a day, Su Mu believed that if he rushed in and fought hard, Lin Ruori might be scared away, but at least the glass in the house would be broken once. And Ning Jing would definitely follow in. Although this was what many men dreamed of, Su Yang would definitely kill him. "Brother Mu. I'm hungry too." Michelle followed him in a coquettish voice. Hey, good to know. You two can rest here. I can do it by myself." Ning Jing hesitated for a moment and followed, "Let me go with you. I can't let you fight with unknown food alone. This is good." Michelle, who was standing by, was unwilling to accept it. She pouted and shouted, "Then I'll go too. I'm worried about you and Ning Jing together." Su Mu sighed helplessly and walked towards the kitchen without saying a word. "Do whatever you want. I really don't know what to do. Ning Jing looked at Michelle deeply and said, Michelle, do you also want to take away half of my body? The little girl snorted coldly, Brother Mu is mine. Mine. Ning Jing replied calmly. Mine. Ning Jing looked at Michelle deeply again, snorted and walked towards the kitchen. Michelle's face was fierce, and her eyes rolled. It seemed that I could form an alliance with Ning Jing. The Major General is too strong now. This is just right for the three of us and Lin Ruori to form a united front. When the time comes, the Major General will belong to Lin Ruori, and Ning Jing and I will compete for Su Mu. How can Ning Jing be as cute as me? Thinking of this, Lin Shuai went after Ning Jing with a smile on her face. She naturally didn't know that Lin Ruori had already sold her out. In the early morning, the shrill air raid sirens echoed in the sky. Michelle, who was originally dreaming, groaned miserably and fell off the bed, landing on her face. The little girl rubbed her nose and disappeared into the room. When she appeared again, she was already outside the house, and Su Mu and others were already standing in the yard. Major General, is it an air raid? Michelle came over, rubbing her red nose. I don't know yet. Su Yang shook her head and turned to Lin Ruori and said, Ruori. Lin Ruori nodded with a serious expression. She opened her mouth but no sound came out. A visible transparent wave radiated out, and soon another wave bounced back. A giant spaceship has just entered the Academy City. Judging from the direction it is sailing, it seems to be passing by here. Su Yang hummed and looked at Ning Jing. Ning Jing nodded slightly and opened her arms. Su Mu looked at her in confusion. What was she doing? Su Mu didn't know what her abilities were. As if noticing his doubts, Su Yang smiled faintly, Mu'er, this child is our Scarlet Rose's trump card. A true strategic existence. We call her ability counterattack, which makes all visible and invisible things that come into contact with her force field go backwards. Su Mu was stunned. So perverted. The scene of Ning Jing stomping her feet and bouncing towards him yesterday appeared in his mind. This girl has already used her ability to perfection. But now he has to consider the air raid. Is war really going to start? Chapter 23 The Goddess arrives. Soon, the shrill air raid sirens disappeared. Serenity blinked and retracted her force field. Several people looked at each other, and Su Mu frowned, what's going on? Su Yang shook her head. Under the astonished gazes of several people, a huge spaceship appeared in the distant sky in an extremely arrogant and unrestrained manner, circled in the sky and flew straight towards here. The Rose. Michelle looked at Lin Ruori suspiciously, and Lin Ruori shrugged to indicate that she didn't know either. Ning Jing was looking at the spaceship in the sky calmly, then her pupils shrank suddenly and she hid behind Su Mu. Su Mu was speechless and acted as a shield again, even though he was used to it. Miss, can you at least show a scared expression? Ning Jing still had no expression on her face, but her little hands were tightly grasping the corner of Su Mu's clothes. Su Yang touched her chin suspiciously. The huge blood-red rose logo on the spaceship seemed to be the rose. But how could the rose appear here? Su Yang had an ominous premonition in her heart. Michelle and Lin Ruori were two clever people who were sneaking back, as if they were ready to flee at any time. When the rose came to the top of the people's heads, it suddenly rose up, and then made a difficult vertical dive. When it was about to hit Su Mu's house, it actually stopped directly on the roof. This inhuman driving skill. Michelle blinked her big eyes and looked at Lin Ruori. Lin Ruori nodded heavily, it can't be wrong. The two little girls screamed and rushed into their house. Su Mu looked at the two girls in confusion. What scared them so much? Su Yang, who was standing beside him, twitched her lips and showed an extremely unnatural expression. Ning Jing's face remained calm, as if she felt that Su Mu could not give her enough sense of security. Ning Jing hid behind Su Yang. Four pillar-like objects extended from the bottom of the rose and were directly fixed on the roof of Su Mu's house. The warehouse door opened, and a standard goddess appeared in front of the few people. Her beautiful face was not much different from Su Yang, her proud breasts far surpassed those of other girls, her slender waist was so thin that it could be grasped with one hand, and her face had a hint of maturity that none of the other girls had. Who else could this be but Chu Elian? With a charming smile on her face, she waved her hand and a ladder descended from the spacecraft. Su Yang smiled bitterly and walked up to her and gave her a hug. Major General, you don't seem to welcome me very much. Chu Elian said with a playful smile. Su Yang hurriedly laughed dryly. No, no, how could that be? Har. Sister Elian. Ning Jing hid behind Su Yang and stuck her head out, as if she was afraid, but there was still no fluctuation on her face. Chu Elian pinched her slightly painful brows with a headache. You really can't do anything about this girl. You never know what she is thinking. Her strength is so abnormal that you can't bully her even if you want to. Sister Elian. Why did you bring the rose here? Su Yang cried out and hugged Chu Elian's arm, praying constantly in her heart. Su Mu blinked and looked at the three women in confusion, as if I had nothing to do with them. Why do I feel that Chu Elian looks familiar? Chu Elian pinched Su Yang's nose in anger and amusement. She actually acted like a spoiled child to her. There was something wrong with the Major General. I'll tell you later. Where are the other two little bastards? Ningjing was stunned after losing her shield and looked into their house. Following Ningjing's gaze, the two girls who were looking at this side furtively from the window were Michelle and Lin Ruoi. Chu Elian snorted and gave them a look. Under Su Mu's astonished gaze, Michelle teleported out directly and exclaimed, the most beautiful, gentle, generous, lovely, sexy Sister Elian. How come you are here? Does this line sound familiar? Just as this thought came into Su Mu's mind, a pink figure pushed him away. Sister Elian Tilder, Lin Ruoi cried out and rushed over. Chu Elian pinched the two little girls' faces fiercely and said with gritted teeth, you two are so smart. The two little girls giggled at the same time. It seemed that everyone was present. Chu Elian cleared her throat and said, I declare that this will be the headquarters of Scarlet Rose from now on. Su Mu dug his ears hard. Did I hear it wrong? Su Yang smiled bitterly. He came after all. Chu Elian just snapped her fingers lightly, and the spaceship fixed on the roof of Su Mu's house activated the space camouflage and slowly disappeared. Hey, wait a moment. As their head of the family, Su Mu certainly had to ask about the situation. He stepped forward and asked in confusion, you want to live here too? Chu Elian looked at Su Mu indifferently, then suddenly her face turned red and she lowered her head, uttering a mosquito-like hum. Michelle's eyes almost popped out of her head. Damn. No way. Love at first sight. Lin Ruoi also widened her beautiful eyes. That Chu Elian actually blushed. She couldn't help but look at Su Mu, who was smiling bitterly, strangely. Is this guy so charming? Su Yang held her forehead with her hand. Oh my god. They are all here. It seems that Sister Elian is still interested in Mu'er. This is too scary. Ning Jing still had a calm expression. She stood beside Su Mu as if declaring her sovereignty, pulling the corner of his clothes with her little hand. You live here too? Is it really okay? Su Mu confirmed with a wry smile. After all, the Blood Rose is a very important department of the Dragon Feather Kingdom. It doesn't matter. I've already informed the Ministry of National Defense. Since the four of them are here anyway, I might as well drive the Rose over here. Chu Elian looked at Su Mu tenderly. Michelle and Lin Ruoi rolled their eyes at the same time. How could Chu Elian have such an expression? Is the world broken? Su Yang kept smiling bitterly and shaking her head. Goodbye, my sweet life for two. Su Mu blinked his eyes strangely. Am I that charming? Then he asked, you seem to know me. His question immediately aroused the curiosity of the other three girls. Yes. How could Chu Elian fall in love at first sight? Chu Elian was stunned and sighed, have you forgotten it? Several people looked at each other at the same time, and Su Mu scratched his head, do we really know each other? I really have no impression. Chu Elian sighed slightly in disappointment, a few years ago, did you save a girl with special abilities who was in a car accident? I remember now. You are that girl. Su Mu blinked. That's true. But that girl is average looking? Girls really change a lot when they grow up. Under Su Mu's naked gaze, Chu Elian's face turned red as if blood was about to drip out, and her ability as a woman to fantasize was fully utilized. If he wants me tonight, what should I do? Chu Elian almost fainted from shame just thinking about this sentence. Chapter 24 We Are Family. Su Yang rolled her eyes and hit Su Mu hard on the back of his head, almost popping his eyeballs out. She asked in dissatisfaction, what are you looking at? Have you never seen a beautiful woman? Su Mu turned his head and saw the word, jealous, written on Su Yang's face. What are you still hesitating about? He immediately nodded and pinched Su Yang's shoulders. Oh, sister, I'm just taking a look. I don't mean anything else. Chu Yidian was not satisfied with this. Isn't this right? He was looking at me, why did you interrupt him? Seeing Su Yang looking at him proudly, was this a declaration of sovereignty? This was a naked provocation. Sovereignty issues must not be compromised. Chu Yidian gritted her teeth and said, Yanga, let's compete fairly. Su Yang frowned. As expected, what you fear will come true. Another person came to snatch Mu'er. Isn't this a direct declaration of war? Should we execute Mu'er tonight? Before Su Yang could say anything, Michelle jumped out, Sister Yidian. This won't do. Brother Mu can't give it to you no matter what. Chu Yidian glared and found that she was not scared back. Well, isn't it just one more opponent? She glanced at Michelle's small body with contempt, and then lifted her chest. Well, I am still very confident with Michelle. A figure stepped forward. It was none other than Ning Jing with an indifferent expression on her face. Sisters, are you all interested in my half-body? I will never give in. Lin Ruori glanced at Su Mu with ill intent, then jumped in front of Su Mu and put her hands on his waist. Then, Su Mu, I will compete with you fairly. Major General will definitely be mine. Su Mu took a step back with a dry laugh and waved his hand. Well, you guys are busy. I'm going to go see He. Are you kidding? A war between women. Is that something you can just get involved in? Besides, it seems like Su Mu is the center of the war. As the saying goes, if the nest is overturned, how can the eggs remain intact? Get out of the way. Wait a minute. The four girls spoke at the same time, stopping Su Mu who was about to leave. Why? I'll go with you, the four girls spoke again at the same time. Lin Ruori was stunned. It seemed that she was isolated. She couldn't help but yelled, I'll go too. Su Mu's head ached, so he decided not to go. If these women went, he would probably go straight to the ICU. Unknowingly, the abyss of blood and darkness had pulled Su Mu in, and a warm welcome party began. In Academy City's #1 hospital for users with special abilities, He, with his head covered in bandages, was lying on the windowsill in boredom. He, who had just teased a nurse intern, was obviously in a good mood and was humming an unknown song in a low voice. At this time, Su Mu, surrounded by 5 women, walked in. He, we are here to see you. He turned his head in confusion. Oh my god. Another one. And she is such a top-notch one. Look at her temperament. Look at her figure. She is simply. Oh no, it's a queen. Is there another woman like this in just one day? Su Mu awkwardly glanced at He who was looking at him admiringly. He, are you okay? Brother, are you here to provoke me? He glanced strangely at Su Mu, who wished he had 3 more arms. Look. A queen and a stunning beauty, one of them holding an arm, a cold-looking little beauty holding the corner of her clothes, and a blonde little girl lying on her back, with a big star following behind her. What a combination! What a class! This has already surpassed the realm of hugging left and right. He murmured in a low voice. Su Mu smiled bitterly. Michelle, can you come down? I'm so tired. Michelle pouted, I won't. Su Yang and Chu Yidian reached out their hands at the same time and each grabbed one of Michelle's legs. A pale little hand grabbed one of Michelle's arms, and the 3 of them exerted a little force to pull the little girl down. Michelle pouted, tears welling up in her big eyes. You bullied me. Su Yang and Chu Yidian looked at each other, sighed at the same time, and let go of Su Mu's arm. Su Yang smiled bitterly and shook her head. Isn't this too much? Chu Yidian looked at Su Mu who was laughing dryly. This is too much for Su Mu. Michelle pouted and continued to ignore him. The more she thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt. Tears were about to flow down. A pale little hand touched her long golden hair. Looking up, Ning Jing's indifferent face came into view, and her eyes revealed concern. Then Michelle felt a chill on her right cheek. It was Su Yang who kissed her cheek. Seeing Michelle looking at her, Su Yang looked at her gently and said, Little fool, we are family, aren't we? Michelle felt her waist tighten. It was Chu Yidian who held her in her arms and gently combed the little girl's blonde hair. We only have one Su Mu. How can we let him break up our family? Lin Ruori ran over with a smile and wiped the tears from Michelle's face. Hey, Michelle, I will never compete with you for Su Mu. The sisters are all bad. They actually compete with the youngest sister for a man. Everyone rolled their eyes at the same time. The good atmosphere was ruined by this girl. Su Mu breathed a sigh of relief. He, who was standing beside him, punched him hard and said, I envy you so much. Su Mu was stunned, and asked with a smile, how about you come to my house and stay for a few days? After struggling for a while, he shook his head decisively, brother is still young and doesn't want to die yet. These 5 women and 1 man all have a blood-red rose on their collars. If he still doesn't know their identities, are they still people from the Longyu Kingdom? Su Yang clapped her hands and stood up. Sisters, although you are all interested in my Mu'er, I will never give in. On the other hand, we can't let Mu'er affect the friendship between us sisters. We are also a family. Let's make an agreement. No matter who gets Mu'er in the future, the others. I agree. However, Yanga, I don't agree with you when you say Su Mu is yours. Let's put it this way. No matter who gets Su Mu, we sisters must stay together forever. Chu Elian, the eldest sister, stood up first. Agree. Ning Jing said lightly. Michelle blinked her big eyes, looked at the few people, and snorted, I agree. Although the sisters have better figures than me. But I will still grow taller. The 3 girls rolled their eyes at the same time and said, you are already 18 years old. Lin Ruori took a step forward, fearing that the world would not be in chaos. She pointed her finger at Su Mu, who was smiling bitterly, and said, Su Mu, I want to make a deal with you too. Su Mu rolled his eyes and said, you're itchy again, aren't you? Lin Ruori covered her little butt with her hands, then looked at Su Mu, who was about to come up to her with his sleeves lifted up to show her a good look. She screamed and quickly hid behind Chu Elian, not forgetting to stretch out her little head and make a face at Su Mu. Everyone couldn't help but smile, this girl. Chapter 25, Beautiful women are not so easy to tease. Hey, could you please stop showing off your affection in other people's wards? He howled in dissatisfaction. The 5 girls raised their heads at the same time, looked at He arrogantly, and asked in unison, do you have any objections? He's mouth twitched and he quickly raised his hands in surrender. Su Mu looked at He sympathetically and sighed, okay. Let's go back first. If he stays any longer, he might really have to go to the ICU. After leaving the hospital, the 5 girls tacitly left Su Mu behind. The 5 beauties, big and small, chattered as they walked down the street, blinding many passers-by. Su Mu walked dejectedly behind the 5 girls. He looked at them and saw Michelle jumping around there. Su Mu secretly cursed her to fall flat on her face. I don't know how long they walked. Su Mu was happy to be alone and walked behind the 5 girls. Finally, Su Yang couldn't help it anymore. She secretly glanced at the other 4 girls, bit her red lips lightly, and walked to Su Mu, Mu'er. Before Su Mu could answer, a small hand grabbed the corner of his clothes. Su Mu was stunned and saw that it was Ning Jing. Another small hand grabbed the other corner of his clothes. It was Michelle. Michelle occupied the advantageous position this time and did not say anything. The little girl was so happy that her eyes almost narrowed into a line. Chu Elian also came over. Seeing that there was no good seat, she sighed helplessly and pulled up Su Yang, who was smiling bitterly, and tried to hold back her laughter. Do you regret it? Su Yang narrowed her eyes with a confident smile on her lips. What a joke. Would I be afraid of you? Mu'er kissed me before. Lin Ruori also ran over and grabbed Su Yang's hand. Major General. Su Mu doesn't want you, I want you. He. Helplessly glaring at her, Su Yang angrily said, can't you change your orientation? He, I don't want to. Just then, a few whistles and a burst of laughter were heard. Su Mu rolled his eyes. Is trouble coming? Sure enough, several young people with colorful hair gathered around. Hey, good afternoon, beautiful girls. A guy with a nose ring on his nose came up with a grin. Har, Menhu. Don't scare the girl. A guy with a crew cut followed behind Menhu and said with a smile. Several other people followed behind the 2 of them, laughing and shouting randomly. Come on, 2 bosses. Har, show off your charm. Boss, ask these beauties to go play with us. Look. That beauty looks like the famous star Lin Ruori. I like her. Boss, I want that little loli. The 5 girls looked at the young men with gangster looks on their faces with disgust, and turned to look at Su Mu in tacit understanding. Of course, a man has to step forward at this time. Su Mu sighed helplessly. What sin did I commit in my previous life? Su Mu smiled and stepped forward to block the way of the few people. Hey, brothers, wait a moment. Men Hu looked at Su Mu suspiciously. This guy is actually a man? Damn. I hate handsome men the most. He said angrily, who the hell are you? The pilot naturally came forward and said, can't you see that you are quite lucky? If you know what's good for you, get out of here. We ask these beauties to accompany us brothers to play because we are giving them face. Su Mu's eyes twitched slightly. Did the talk fall apart in an instant? He turned around and glanced at the 5 women. Several women were also looking at him, their eyes full of encouragement. Su Mu paused. What should he do? Beat them up? That's fine. But while Su Mu was in a daze, Shoho's patience had obviously run out. He pushed Su Mu away in a hurry and said, get out. Su Mu, who was daydreaming, didn't pay attention and was pushed by the skinny monkey, causing him to stagger. Su Yang's beautiful eyes suddenly stood up, and she called out worriedly, Muer. The other girls, including Lin Ruoi, looked at him worriedly, and when they saw that he was fine, they all breathed a sigh of relief. The guy with the crew cut smiled obscenely and said, ladies, what's the point of you being with that guy who looks like a woman? Yes. If you stay with us, we can let you know what the charm of a man is. A younger brother thrust his lower body obscenely. Things had been going wrong for the 5 girls. Su Yang stared at the monkey with her beautiful eyes erect. How dare you push him? Men Hu was stunned. This beauty is so charming even when she is angry. I have to say. Even when Su Yang is angry, she is still radiant. At that moment, Men Hu grinned playfully and stretched out a hand to touch Su Yang's beautiful face. The other women were naturally very angry as well, but when they saw what Skinny Monkey did, they couldn't help but cover their eyes at the same time. Under Su Mu's dull gaze, Su Yang slapped Men Hu in the face with a backhand slap. Men Hu was stunned. The burning sensation on his face was truly mocking. The crew-haired guy and other little brothers beside him were also laughing at him. His face turned cold and he said, how dare you hit me, bitch? You have no shame. The skinny monkey suddenly raised his hand and hit Su Yang in the face. A pale little hand suddenly appeared and lightly grabbed the skinny monkey's hand. Ning Jing looked at the skinny monkey calmly. How dare you touch half of my body, and dare to offend the Major General? Major General. The skinny monkey's brain froze at that moment. Major General? Before the skinny monkey could come to his senses, Chu Elian grabbed the skinny monkey by the collar without saying a word, and slapped him 10 times in a row with both hands and backhands, making the skinny monkey dizzy. This is too much. The pilot shouted in surprise, Skinny Monkey. Damn, you can't tell you are gangster. Brothers, follow me. Over there, Men Hu, who probably guessed the identities of the women, didn't have time to say anything before Lin Ruoi, with a smile on her face, kicked Men Hu in the crotch. In an instant, Men Hu's face turned purple, and the words on his lips turned into the wails of a puppy before its tragic death. Su Mu, who had just been pushed aside, subconsciously clamped his legs together. It must be very painful, right? Michelle. Chu Elian called out lightly. Michelle giggled, raised her hand, and moved a few people to an alley. A person with special abilities. The pilot was startled. Su Yang glanced at Lin Ruoi. How could Lin Ruoi not understand? She slightly opened her red lips and a sound wave spread out, isolating the sound in the alley from the outside world. Ning Jing waved her hand lightly, and just as she was wondering how she got here, the nose of the plane flew out sideways, hit the wall and sank deeply into it, and it seemed that more air was exhaled than inhaled. Michelle jumped up with a smile on her face and slapped a confused little brother in the face. The little brother felt like a supersonic fighter plane hit his head, and then he knew nothing. Su Mu, who originally wanted to teach these hooligans a lesson, found a random stool and sat down to watch the girls start to abuse the hooligans. He was almost out of popcorn. Kid, beautiful women are not so easy to tease. What's more, the one you teased was a tough girl. Chapter 26, The Unmarriageable Director of the Discipline Department. Looking at this group of blind hooligans with sympathy, Su Mu was in a dilemma. Should he send them to the Superpower Supervisory Bureau? Or to the hospital? It seems that they are not superpowers. Should they be sent to the police station? But there is no police station in Academy City. People without superpowers are hanging around in a city full of superpowers. These guys are quite courageous. The beauties, big and small, all looked refreshed. Isn't this a punching bag that comes to your doorstep? Right. After finally finding a man that they like, they have to compete with their sisters for him. The one who attacked the hardest was naturally Su Yang. She had been very angry these past few days. If she had a choice, she would never let her sisters meet Su Mu. Su Yang breathed a sigh of relief. That's great. A relaxed smile hung on her pretty little face, and she casually took out the communicator. Soon, the image of a young girl appeared on the communicator. This girl is also an absolute beauty, with dark eyebrows, a delicate nose, red lips, pearly teeth, and a slender waist and breasts that are comparable to Su Yang. When the girl saw Su Yang, her eyes lit up and she called out in surprise, "Major General Su." Su Yang smiled slightly. "Nini, how are you doing recently?" "Nini? Sun Ni? Director of Discipline Department." Su Mu exclaimed. He seemed to have seen this girl in the academy. That's right. This girl is Sun Ni, the Director of Discipline Department of the Academy City Student Self-Government Association, who is affiliated with Fenghua Academy. Sun Ni was stunned and blinked confusedly. "Who are you?" "This is my younger brother Su Mu." Su Yang smiled. "Are? Your brother?" Sun Ni looked at Su Mu with shining eyes. Su Yang snorted, and Michelle, Ning Jing and Chu Elian stood in front of Su Mu at the same time. Su Yang then looked at Sun Ni with a smile. "Nini, how can you look at someone else's brother like this?" Sun Ni looked at the girls surrounding Su Mu in surprise. "So there are so many people queuing." Su Yang rolled her eyes. "Queue? Back then, Muir was mine alone." Thinking about it, Su Yang became more and more angry. She snorted, "Nini, I didn't contact you so that you can see my brother." Yes, what's the matter?" "My Major General Su." Sun Ni asked strangely. "Oh, these are the people. These bastards actually dare to tease us sisters." Su Yang pointed at the thugs. Sun Ni was stunned. "Damn. Is there anyone in this world who teases the 5 humanoid nuclear warheads of Bloody Rose?" At first glance, Sun Ni couldn't help but roll her eyes. Who is teasing whom? Look. A guy with a row of nose rings was lying on the ground, holding his crotch with his hands. His face was dark purple, and it was obvious that he had tasted the most vicious crotch kick in the underworld. A guy with a crew cut was directly stuck in the wall, and it was obvious that he was blasted in with a terrifying force. The other hooligans also had bruises on their faces, and they looked like they were breathing more than breathing in. Rubbing her hair in distress, Sun Ni spread her hands with a sad face. "Well, Major General Su. Our discipline department doesn't deal with such hooliganism." Now, Su Yang was not comfortable. She glared at him. "You girl. It's none of your business. Do you want me to introduce you to a boyfriend?" Su Mu was stunned. What is this? Is this a threat or something? Sun Ni snapped her fingers, her eyes glowing green as she said with a grin, "Reliable. He. Su Yang? You said it. I'll take care of this. I'll be here right away." Without waiting for Su Yang to speak, Sun Ni impatiently closed the communication. Su Yang was stunned. Is this girl crazy about love? Then she was shocked again. "Sisters. Quick. Hide Muir." The women were confused. Chu Elian, the leader, asked, "Yanga, please explain clearly. Why did you hide Muir?" The other girls also nodded. Why would they hide Su Mu for no reason? Su Yang was so anxious that she almost cried. It would take a while to explain this matter. Suddenly, an idea flashed in her mind, and Su Yang smiled. "Do you want to share Muir with one more person?" "R." Michelle screamed, scaring Lin Ruori. "What's wrong? What are you yelling about, you little bastard?" Chu Elian patted her towering chest. Wasn't she just savoring Su Yang's words? Michelle's scream almost scared her darling out. "I'm just yelling to fit the mood." Michelle lowered her head in grievance. Chu Elian was about to criticize the girl again, but her beautiful eyes paused. "Quick, hide Muir." Although Ning Jing still didn't understand what was going on, she just slapped the wall next to her, and the wall collapsed with a bang. "Hurry." Several women chattered and forced Su Mu, who was still confused, into the collapsed house. Then Michelle waved her hand and the wall returned to its original state. Su Mu was locked in a room speechlessly. He blinked his eyes. Why are you hiding me? Hey? Sun and I? It seems that there are many legends about her in the academy. The top 3 beauties in Academy City. Level 6 superpower, top 10 in Academy City, and it is said that she has never been in a relationship. Oh, that's right. Who would dare to marry such a strong woman? Are you crazy about falling in love? Su Mu was stunned. It seems that his sister is also such a woman. Oh. No. It seems that all the women around him are such women. The more Su Mu thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. What the hell? What was going on? Did he think my house was a shelter? All these women came here because no one wanted them. But then he thought again, after spending the past few days with these women, Su Mu felt helpless. Could he bear to be separated from them now? At this moment, a pure white little hand punched the wall and broke it into pieces. A young girl looked at Su Mu, who was covered in dirt due to the collapse of the wall, with a smile on her face. Who else could it be but Sun and I told you. You hit Su Mu. Sun and I smiled proudly. Several girls surrounded him as if they were facing a great enemy, and blocked the helpless Su Mu behind them. Even Lin Ruori stood in front of Su Mu, looking like she was protecting a beloved toy. What? What are you doing? Sun and I looked at the girls with dissatisfaction. Su Yang snorted and raised her pointed chin. HMPH, Ninny, take your prisoner away quickly. Hey! You are such a jerk, Su Yang. You are destroying the bridge after crossing it. Sun and I was so angry. If it weren't for you wanting to introduce me to a boyfriend, I wouldn't have come. Huh? Boyfriend? Seeing Sun and I blinking her big eyes, she tilted left and right curiously, trying to see Su Mu's appearance clearly. The girls who knew some of Sun and I's stories immediately became very nervous and blocked it more tightly. The protagonist of the incident, Su Mu, could only smile bitterly. This life is unbearable. Chapter 27, Can I Get Involved Too? Sun and I blinked her big eyes twice and bit her red lips. If you don't let me see it, I will. Sun and I stomped her feet suddenly, and a force like a landslide shook the ground violently. Several women were immediately unstable. Su Mu, who was blocked behind them, naturally came into Sun and I's sight. Wow! What a pretty little man! Sun and I exclaimed in surprise. This time she saw clearly. This kid is really born beautiful. Even she, a beautiful woman, has an inexplicable sense of inferiority. Su Mu's legs went limp. Oh my god! Why do every woman look at me like this? I look like a man now. Do I look like a bottom? Su Mu asked, pointing at his head. Sun and I, Su Yang and other girls nodded in tacit understanding. This is intolerable. Su Mu pulled his collar to reveal the 7-character badge and snorted, Liberation. Michelle screamed and quickly jumped away from Su Mu. Su Yang was also stunned. What happened to Mu'er? But now she was in a daze. She also deliberately moved away from Su Mu. As Michelle's ally, how could Lin Ruori not know Su Mu's ability? She quickly pulled Ning Jing and Chu Ilian, who had just arrived, away from Su Mu. Sun and I's eyes almost popped out. Oh my god! What did I see? The little bottom instantly became the top. The sissy instantly became a handsome guy, right? The long silver hair moved without wind, the silver eyes were as cold as ice without any fluctuations, and the tall and slightly thin body revealed an explosive power from top to bottom. Sun and I looked at Su Mu with shining eyes. What a handsome guy! A naked handsome guy. She turned her head to look at the beauties and hesitated for a moment. Well, Su Yang. You don't mind if I get involved, do you? Mind. Su Yang raised her eyebrows and refused very firmly. Michelle snorted, we 5 sisters are now a united front. If you think you can beat the 5 of us, come and grab it. Ning Jing walked silently behind Michelle to show her support. I have the same attitude. Chu Ilian naturally supported it as well. Who would want to have one more person snatch Su Mu away? Su Yang glanced at Lin Ruori, who was wavering. She stood behind Michelle decisively, fearing that the other girls didn't know her feelings. She shouted loudly, we are sisters with one mind. Our strength is unbreakable. Sun and I was depressed. She finally found a man who was not afraid of her. He was just stronger. The men who looked down on her only had lustful thoughts when they saw her, and the men who liked her didn't have the courage to even talk to her. Sun and I gritted her teeth, and before the other girls could react, she rushed over and hugged Su Mu's arm, shouting, "I don't care. I'm going to get involved. Humph, if you have the guts, beat me to death." Michelle screamed and covered her eyes. Su Yang held her forehead with her hand. It was all over. Lin Ruori, Ning Jing and Chu Elian stared blankly at Sun Ni, who instantly became naked like a stripped quail. What was this? Sun Ni, who was still unaware, blinked her big eyes, looked at the 5 girls in confusion, and then looked at Su Mu. She saw a trace of cold sweat dripping from Su Mu's forehead, and his originally cold body became hot. A breeze blew by, and Sun Ni shivered and looked down. Wow, tilde. Thinking of how she was naked just now, hugging Su Mu's arm tightly and rubbing it constantly, 2 clouds of fire floated onto Sun Ni's cheeks. Okay, stop crying. You're not the only one who's been seen. Michelle grumbled dissatisfiedly. Sun Ni looked up at Michelle with tears in her eyes, but. Patting Sun Ni's shoulder gently to express sympathy and comfort, Su Yang sighed and said resignedly, "There is no other way. I will just let you get involved." "You haven't been seen too, have you?" Sun Ni looked at Su Yang strangely. Su Yang blushed and said, softly, then immediately added, "But it's better than you, we were at home at that time, not on the street." On the street? Sun's world seemed to explode. Oh my god. On the street. Although there were few people there. If anyone else saw. Chu Elian sat silently aside. Major General and Michelle had both been seen by Su Mu? It seems I am behind. How about I show it to Su Mu too? Thinking of this, Chu Elian secretly glanced at Su Mu, who had a big bump on his head, and her pretty face turned red with shame. Ning Jing, who was always silent, stood up, walked to Su Mu and stared at him indifferently. What? Su Mu asked depressedly, covering his head. Have you seen the Major General and Michelle's naked bodies? Ning Jing's face still had no expression. Secretly looking at Su Yang and Michelle, Su Mu hesitated for a moment and nodded. Maybe Ning Jing will give up on me because of this? Ning Jing's pale little face turned red, she bit her lower lip with her pearly teeth, and raised her hand to take off her clothes. How could this be possible? Su Yang was the first to rush over, followed by Michelle, and the other 3 women were not far behind. Ningjing? Don't be impulsive. Chu Elian was so anxious. I haven't shown it to him yet. Why are you so anxious? Oh, that's not right. I can't show it to him. Ningjing, calm down Ningjing. Are you going to let this bastard off so easily? Lin Ruori grabbed Ningjing's arm tightly. Ningjing struggled with a red face. Let me go, I will be his sooner or later, let's see what's going on. How can I fall behind you? Su Mu looked at the chattering beauties in silence. As the saying goes, 3 women make a play, so what are 6 women? A Hollywood blockbuster from ancient times. If 3 women are equal to 3,000 ducks, then 6 women are equal to 6,000 ducks. Anyway, it seems that life is impossible. Just then Sun Ni slammed the table, and their bang sound scared the girls. Nini, what's wrong? Su Yang asked puzzledly. The usually imposing head of the discipline department's face flushed red as he gasped, I've decided. I want to join the Scarlet Rose. Suddenly her eyes fell to the ground, and Su Yang coughed lightly, Nini, why are you doing this? Sun Ni wrinkled her nose and started crying, what do you want me to do? I tried to snatch it from you, but you wouldn't let me. I've suffered a loss. I can't beat the 5 of you, so am I just going to give up? I don't want to. Don't you welcome me? The 5 members of the Scarlet Rose group looked at each other and sighed at the same time. The 5 girls came to Sun Ni's side. Su Yang gently hugged Sun Ni, who was crying. Then, welcome to join the Scarlet Rose. I will help you submit the application tomorrow. We will be sisters from now on. As the eldest sister, Chu Elian gently touched Sun Ni's head and said lovingly, silly girl, stop crying. It's all Su Mu's fault.